Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Irish Breakdown podcast brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Happy Wednesday. We got the midweek rundown today. Spring practice is in full effect. Notre Dame just had their pro day yesterday, so we have a lot of different things that we're going to cover today. Obviously, we're going to talk about the practice that you were at earlier this morning. Brian, give us a quick recap of how that went down today. Got to see the first 4 periods of practice, I believe, so excited to dive into all of that today. We're going to talk about Notre Dame's pro day that you and I were both at yesterday. We're going to talk about some offensive line talk. We're going to be talking offensive improvements. We're talking defensive improvements. So, man, we have a loaded show today. I'm ready to dive into some of this stuff.
Yeah, me too, man. Little heads up, we're going to kind of do a little bit of a rundown tomorrow either, because there's just so many topics that we really want to get into these next couple days. So I'm very, these next couple days I think are going to be a lot of fun, Trev. There's no doubt about it. But man, it's kind of funny. It used to be where what off season is now, like basically what, like middle January to middle February, like that's the off season now. I mean, everything else is just constant, just something's going on. And I love this time of the year because spring ball, pro day, the draft is down the street, blue gold right down the street, the blue gold game. You've got recruiting visits going on. And then of course, June official visits. And it's that fun time of year, man, where a lot of stuff happens in March through June that didn't used to happen that way, Trev. It used to be real quiet, but I'm excited about it. And just being out at practice today, you just quickly get reminded, Trev, that this is a really talented football team, man. Like, really talented team. And I was thinking about that, like how talented this team is. And when I say that to y'all, when I talk about how talented this team looks, understand I'm not saying how talented they're going to be once the current group and Drake Bowen and, Kingston Viliama-Asa and DJ McKinney and Ashton Craig and Javian Osborne and, of course, Aeneas and Keedron Young. And I start listening Ian Premer. I start listening to all the guys that aren't practicing now that they return. I'm saying right now, with what we see, they're legit. I mean, this team is big. I was talking with a friend of mine today who was at practice, and won't say publicly kind of the things that he said, but there was one thing he's talking about, like, man, this O-line is big. And this is someone who knows, it's a former NFL football player, you know what I mean? So, like, he understands what size is. This isn't just some guy that I knew, who was, just happened to be there today selling Gatorade or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, this is a former NFL football player at practice talking about how big the offensive line looked. Just things like that, Trev. Just they look the part. And it doesn't take very long. I mean, just texting with a friend of mine who covers the team for another outlet just the other day. I was like, dude, am I nuts for like thinking this team is ridiculous? He goes, no, not at all, man. Like, I'm feeling the same way. And he tends to be a bit more pessimistic than I am. That's why I wanted to ask him, I'm like, man, am I nuts for, and he's like, no, you're like, this team is ridiculous. And today was another example of that, Trev. We got to see 4 periods, nothing earth shattering in 4 periods. We literally got to watch them do stretch, kickoff, return, and then 3 periods of individual, which included some RVA. But even then, there's things you can gather, and obviously that's the stuff we'll talk about. But you just can't help but notice the size, the length, and just the overall athleticism that this team possesses. It's an impressive thing to watch. I mean, even when you're like getting down to like the third string at certain positions, you're just like, dude, that guy might have started on the 2020 team. I mean, it's ridiculous. It really is. And it's a good ridiculous. It was fun to be out there again today.
No, I believe it, man. I walked away from their first spring practice with the same feelings, and they didn't even have shoulder pads on. You're watching the O-line and D-line go back and forth. You have to take it with a grain of salt because they're not actually hitting. Same thing with the linebackers and the running backs. But you want to talk about looking the part. This team absolutely looks the part. I echo everything that you said, man. I love this time of year. Still got March Madness going on. The Lady Irish are still going.
Sweet 16, man. Baby. Yeah, man. And the men's baseball or the men's baseball team, as if there's like not a men's baseball team. The baseball team is on fire right now, Trev. They had a huge sweep of number 19 Clemson this past weekend as well. So, yeah, I mean, Notre Dame sports right now, men's lacrosse, I believe, is still number 1, correct? Still ranked number 1. I don't think they've lost yet. So yeah, it's been a pretty good time at Notre Dame athletics. It's been a pretty good time so far. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it has, man. The Lady Irish play, I believe, Friday afternoon. They play Wake Forest. I think FanDuel right now has them at 5.5-point dogs right now. But weren't they underdogs going into the Ohio State game
They Ohio
as
State was a
well?
3 seed and it was in Columbus. I heard Sean and
Hmm.
Jesse talking last night about men's and women's fencing also both just won. That's just kind of like oh yeah, the sky is blue. Notre Dame won the you know what I mean? Like that's how dominant they are in fencing. Like, oh hey, Notre Dame won fencing. Oh, okay, cool. Is the earth still round? Yeah, okay, cool. That's what I thought. So but I heard Jesse and Sean. Sean was talking about the Vanderbilt matchups, actually one that could be favorable for Notre Dame because of the fact that like the teams that have given them problems are teams that have a lot of size, and apparently this is what Sean said. I'm not telling you what I think because I don't know. He said, but the teams that have given them problems have been teams with a lot of size, and Vanderbilt's not a team with a lot of size. So who knows? Maybe they'll go. And then of course for Ayanna Moore, this is a big game for her, Trev, because she obviously transferred to Vanderbilt. So maybe she'll be able to give some insights. Maybe she'll be able to play as well against Vanderbilt as Ty Washington did when they played against Arkansas. I was a man possessed blocking that day, brother. There's no doubt. So good time to be a Notre Dame fan. But obviously right now the football team is king. So I actually am checking right now to see if the men's lacrosse team, I believe they're still undefeated, Trev, but I don't want to speak out of turn. Yeah, they're 6-0, ranked number 1 in the country. So they haven't played since they beat Michigan on March 14th. So back-to-back wins over Michigan and Ohio State. That'll play.
Yeah,
that'll play.
That ain't bad.
I think they've already had 3 ranked. They're 6-0, but I think 3 of their wins were against ranked teams.
Good Lord.
I believe. I think Georgetown was ranked. I think Maryland was ranked. And I believe one of the other teams that they beat was ranked. No, maybe it's just the 2. Maybe Ohio State might have been ranked too. I'm not sure. I'd have to go look and see that again. But yeah, it's been fun to watch, man. It's been fun to watch this sports the last couple weeks. No doubt about that.
You said, it's a really good time to be a Notre Dame fan here in sports, but let's talk about some football, man. And
I was real quick. Ohio State was ranked because they're still number 6. So Ohio State is currently number 6. Notre Dame beat them. Maryland is number 12. Notre Dame beat them. Georgetown's number 14. Notre Dame beat them. So yes, they have half of their wins right now over teams that are currently ranked in the top 15. So that's not bad. And then mark this down in your calendars, folks. I think it's Friday, April 4th. Or is it? It would actually be Saturday, April 4th. Notre Dame travels out to Evanston, Illinois, to play the Richmond Spiders. Notre Dame's ranked number 1 in the coaches poll. They got 25 first place votes. Number 2 right now, Richmond. It's got 4 first place votes. So some big ins still coming up, Trev. Some big ins still coming up. So I have to try to get out to a lacrosse game here soon.
Definitely a lot of opportunity to solidify their number 1 spot. That's for sure. That is absolutely for sure.
Now, Brian, we can get back to football, Trev. I'm sorry. I'm just so excited, man. It's spring. I love the spring, man.
No, you're good, man. You're good. I get it. Well, let's talk about the practice that you were at today, man. And let's start with the offensive side of the ball. We're 2 offensive guys, and let's start with a position that you hold near and dear to your heart. Talk to me about what you saw from the wide receivers today.
Yeah, so a day like today with the practices we saw, I wanted to kind of focus on a few groups, and one of the groups that I really focused on early in the period were the wide receivers. Because there's still some question marks about that group, and not question marks from a concern standpoint, but just like we don't know. We've only seen Mylan Graham once in a Notre Dame uniform. We've only seen Caden Finley and Bubba Frazier, and Jaden Greathouse was very limited in the first practice, and so there's still some uncertainty about that position. A lot of talent, but I got a chance to watch it today, and they're going through different drills, and it's a lot of the same stuff that Mike Brown does in a lot of practices, which actually that's not an insult to me. I am a believer in repetition when it comes to the basics. You should work stance and start every day. You should work top ends every day. You should work, proper cuts out of your breaks every day. So I'm all for that. And so working on the get off. My only really knock on the day is they still just, to me, don't emphasize enough really exploding off the line. I'd still love to see that. But outside of that, really good. Like, so you can see them, they're all doing a better job of really sinking their hips at the top end, because a lot of times, Trev, guys will kind of sink their butts, or they'll try to like be vertical, but keep that forward lean and really slam it down, quick 1-2 out of it. They're getting better in that regard. Some of the guys are really good at it. Mylan Graham's really good at it. Jordan Faison's really good at it when his technique is right. So watching them do that, and then they're working on, stop cuts, comeback cuts, in cuts, things like that, and working on after the catch. It's what I love is really a lot of these position groups. There's like 3 guys working with these guys. I'll talk about that in the secondary as well. But you've got obviously Mike Brown, you've got Trent Miles and Sean Shivers all working with the receivers in different areas. And so Coach Brown's working on the takeoff and the top end, and then you've got Trent Miles over there working with him on what to do after the catch, things like that, and coaching guys up. And he tends to spend a little bit more time with the younger players, it seems like, which again makes sense. Let Coach Brown in certain parts work on these guys, because he can't talk to 15 guys at once. You know what I mean? Like, it's a good thing. It's not like Mike Brown's not coaching the young guys. It's, you know what I mean? It's a good structure. So some of the observations from the receivers, Trev, is, Jordan Faison's obviously leading them through every drill, which has been good. Cam Williams, Trev, the big thing for me, Cam Williams looks as, oh man, he just looks confident. That's the big thing for me, is he looks confident. He looks like a guy that is starting to figure it out. I'm not going to sit there and say, he's going to have a breakout. He's going to go out there and be 1,000-yard. I'm not saying any of that. I'm simply saying he's a guy that right now is looking more confident compared to what he used to be. I mean, Cam used to, when I say used to, I'm talking about this past fall. Cam would look uncomfortable coming out of his stance. He would look super choppy on his top ends. He would drop the ball because he's still thinking about the route coming out of his break. And it looked different when Cam did it than when anybody else did it. Just technically, like choppy, or like I'm not sure of what I'm doing. Watching him today, he's coming off the line well. He's, getting in and out of his stance. He's pretty well, making his cuts, catching the ball, and doing some good things. Matter of fact, actually, during the individual period, so the first 2 individual periods, so it's about 10 minutes, it's all the drill work with Mike Brown after the catch stuff. During that period, I only saw 1 ball hit the ground, and that was on Coach Brown because who, by the way, has a hose. He was a high school quarterback, I believe, but he can still sling it. So he threw 1 slant route, was it a slant? It was an out cut. He threw 1 out cut way behind Alex Whitman. Like, Alex could barely get a fingertip on it behind him. That was the only ball that hit the ground. And also it was super quiet. And when I say quiet, there's 2 sounds that a ball, it's different than like a catcher's mitt. So like when a catcher's catching, like if a pitcher's bringing it, it's going to pop. There's nothing a catcher can do to keep a Nolan Ryan fastball from popping the catcher's mitt. That's not true for football players, because there's a lot more give in the hands of a wide receiver than there is in a catcher's mitt. I don't want a ball to sound really loud when it hits the receiver's hand. And it was kind of hit or miss in the past. Today it was wild, Trev. Like, even though Coach Brown is throwing like darts from 5 yards downfield, they're not running like, so they're doing top end. So like you're 5 yards and in. And so like, well, okay, that's an under route, but that's also the same technique as a 20-yard dig. And they're doing 5-yard out cuts, but that's going to be the same technique as a 15 to 20-yard out cut. So you don't need to have them run 15 to 20 yards to work on the top end. And so they're just doing all the top ends, and you get rapid fire, and then you work on the extended routes when you get in with the quarterbacks. So everything is like 5 to 10-yard cuts, and he's throwing BBs, and everything is just quiet, soft. Just and they're really attacking the ball. I don't know that one time I heard the ball hit a pad during that drill, and only the one time it hit the ground, and that was because Coach Brown threw a bad ball. They were catching the ball real well during the individual period. And the only drop that I saw, and I didn't even call it a drop, Cam had a drop during the one-on RVA period, and it was a way behind ball that he could barely get his fingertips on. And so, but I love the fact that the coaches were like, catch the ball. And I'm like, he's probably not going to catch that. But that's the standard you want to set, right? But getting back to Cam, it was great to see him looking comfortable just doing the basics. Now, again, that doesn't mean that Cam's going to have a breakout. It doesn't mean that Cam's going to, become a star, like I said, but it's good that he's starting to look like a college wide receiver. That's huge because the talent is immense, and you can see that. And he's looking more and more confident and more comfortable with what he's doing. I thought Mylan Graham was outstanding just athletically. He's really impressive athletically as well. He really is. Saw a lot of growth today from Caden Finley and Devin Fitzgerald just from practice 1 to practice 4. Practice 1, Trev, you were there. They didn't have a clue what they were doing. I mean, they looked so lost during parts of the early periods of practice. Today, they looked better. They still looked a little bit like freshmen, but just seeing Caden just be quicker with his feet. I know he's a good route runner. Seeing him just look more confident with his top ends. You and I talked about, man, Devin Fitzgerald has a long way to go. We said it on Monday. He's already made up a lot of that ground, Trev. He looked a lot better today, a lot more confident today, attacked the ball well, much sharper with his top ends, much more comfortable than what he looked like in practice 1. So just overall, really pleased. Elijah Burris. I mean, just athletically, they all look great. I mean, this is an impressive group. You can see the difference between the veterans and the freshmen. And in the past, that was harder to tell. And this may sound like are the freshmen not as good? Not the takeaway. The takeaway is you should never have freshmen looking similar to upperclassmen when it comes to their technique and how to get out of their stance and how to get out of cuts. You better have a differentiation on practice 4 between your freshmen and your juniors. And today, there was a clear gap between the two, but it wasn't because the freshmen still look lost. And that was a great sign to see. And but to watch, I mean, and usually freshmen have a lot of the drops because, again, Trev, they're thinking about, okay, here's my footwork, and I'm supposed to do 1, 2, and it's on my 5th step. And then you turn around, the ball's there, and oh crap, and you're fumbling it all around. We didn't see that today. And overall, like I said, Trev, really impressed athletically with what I saw from that group.
Well, that's great news to hear. We're going to be talking about the wide receiving core later on in this show as well. But Brian, let's switch over to the running back room, which is a room that's been relatively light this spring. There's no Javian Osborne. There's no Keedron Young. Aeneas Williams is limited in practice. So really, we're seeing a lot of Jonas Walton and Nolan James. What did you see from them today?
So didn't watch the running backs a ton. I watched them a little bit during kick return, and you could see Aeneas really has a lot more juice this year, Trev. Like, not that he was ever like not athletic, but okay. Just because Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price aren't there anymore doesn't mean I don't know what an elite burst looks like. You know what I'm saying? But it was very noticeable when Aeneas was practicing last year that there was a difference in burst between him and them. You see today, there's obviously not those guys to compare it to. But even with that, you can see Aeneas showing a little bit more juice when he catches the ball. You could really see it during kick return today. So we saw it a little bit during individual, but individual with running backs, it's not the time to be like going, full speed. Like kick return, they were. So to see Aeneas kick the ball, and he was the primary kick returner, one of them, because it's like 4 or 5 guys getting drills. So he wasn't like the up back like he was last year. He was one of the guys that was catching the kicks today during kick return drill. And you could just see that little extra burst today, Trev, just that little bit of extra juice. Now, obviously, he's still not going to be doing contact stuff, but athletically, it was good to see that. The guy that continues to really impress me is Nolan James Jr. I mean, he is really quick, Trev. He has great feet. I mean, just really explosive feet. But again, he had the catch of the day, kind of like he had the other day. I mean, they were running just kind of like a boundary flood concept, right? And He's running a deep out cut, and I think it was Blake Hebert threw the ball behind. It might have been Noah. I don't remember. I shouldn't even say a quarterback because I'm not quite sure who it was. I thought it was 12, but it might have been 10. Ball's way behind him, and he just reaches around. It's like literally does this, Trev. He just pulls it in nonchalantly, cuts upfield. I'm like, he's acting like he just did something like that. Like, oh yeah, it's like it hit him right here. He just, literally never got a second handle. Just reached out, grabbed it, pulled it in. Guys, this is on like a 12 to 15 yard out cut. This isn't something like, oh, he was running a slide route and the ball, you know what I mean? This is a ball that had some juice on it, and he just reaches around, snatches out of the air like it's nothing, pulls it in, cuts upfield, and then acts like he didn't do anything. And then, like, nobody really reacted to it. I'm like, does he really do this that often that, like, nobody's even reacting to Nolan James making this ridiculous catch? He looks super good, super comfortable, Trev. Like, he is an impressive guy. Really impressive guy. And Jonas is athletically really impressive, but he's still like the other freshmen coming along. But watching those two guys play, catch the ball, those two guys catch the ball like receivers, Trev. I won't say what routes they were running today other than the outcut, but there's like a couple routes they were running that are part of a concept that I don't necessarily want to say what they're doing. I don't want to get in trouble, but it's like, okay, they plan on the running back still being a part of the pass game this year. It's very clear the way that all three of them, because Jonas can catch the ball too. Jonas Walton had well over 1,000 yards receiving in his high school career. They can all catch the ball really well. And they're definitely still making that a part of what they're doing based on what we've seen both of the first two practices. Because we saw that on the Friday practice as well, Trev. And getting a chance to see that today was fun to watch. It's a talented group. No, there's no Jeremiah Love. We all understand that. Nobody's going to have a Jeremiah Love. But what we saw today from these kids is really fun to watch. Really fun to watch.
Let's talk about a position group that I hold near and dear to my heart, Brian. Let's talk about some tight ends. And when we were at the first practice on Friday, there were some noticeable things about guys like Ty Washington that we saw was a little different. Cooper Flanagan was back out there, which was great to see. What'd you see from them today?
Really just looking healthier. That was a big thing that I saw. They did mostly blocking drills today, and then they just ran some seam routes during RVA. What I was looking for is I wanted to see Cooper's burst off the line. That's always the big concern with an Achilles injury. Does he have the same explosiveness? Does he have the same cutting ability? I believe, this is my opinion, I believe that Achilles are a lot like what ACLs used to be, where a lot of times you're just not the same athlete. Now you get an ACL, some guys come back faster. Drew Tranquil tore both of his ACLs at Notre Dame and ran a 4.5 at the combine after his career was over. And now he's known as a top level athlete in the NFL as a linebacker, right? So ACLs or Achilles still concern me because it's harder to repair those. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's because of where the injury is. I don't know if the technology hasn't advanced in the way that it has with ACLs. I don't know. I mean, Kobe Bryant went through that. We've seen athletes tear their Achilles, and they're just not the same guy coming back athletically. So that was my big thing with Cooper Flanagan was, now I know we're well over a year removed from the surgery, but to see him come off the line and blocking drills, Trev, and have that pop, and then to watch him just really get off the line well and show some juice running seam routes, that was really important for me to see that from him, because you feel like, okay, now we at least have some level of confirmation that he's going to be the same athlete he was before the Achilles. And that's very important. And Ty Washington looked good again today, Trev, athletically. He has really worked. It seems that he's worked really hard to reshape his body from last year. He's impressed. And then James Flanagan obviously continues to impress as well. But I didn't spend a lot of time on the tight ends other than just I want to see how they're moving. And they're moving well. And it's a different type of movement, right? Like none of them are going to have the 40 speed that Eli Raridan had. You know what I mean? None of them are like the smooth athlete, the Mitchell. They're different types of athletes. They're more like tight ends, but they move real well. Real well.
That's good. That's good to hear. I can't coin this knowledge as my own. This is something that my wife told me. She's an occupational therapist. But for Achilles injuries, one of the reasons why it takes longer to heal is there's not as much blood flow as when it goes to a ligament since it's a tendon.
That makes sense.
Yep,
That makes sense.
Can't coin that as my own. I just sounded a heck of a lot smarter than what I actually am, but that knowledge does not come from my side of the Trowbridge household. So
it's all right.
But now we know
as long as it's there.
Now we know it. Let's wrap up the offensive talk, Brian, with the quarterbacks. It's tough to talk about this Notre Dame team and not talk quarterbacks. So what'd you see from them today, man?
Yeah, again, didn't spend a lot of time talking with the quarterbacks outside of just watching them throw RVA. CJ was CJ. We'll talk more about CJ when we get to the pro day. But big thing for me, Trev, was I still want to see Noah Grubbs and his development. And he was the one quarterback I really zeroed in on today when they were doing RVA. And I really like how the ball's coming out of his hand, Trev. He really can juice it up, but he's not trying to juice it up. Like anybody can throw hard. Anyone that's on scholarship at Notre Dame can throw hard if they put enough into it. You want to have a guy. I mean, Tommy Rees could throw a 15-yard dig route with some zip, but he had to really, and this isn't an insult, it's just difference in arm strength. He had to really muscle it up. Jack Cohn could do that, but he had to really muscle it up. They were more about timing and accuracy and things like that. Then there's the guys that have just the big arms. They can just explode it. To see Noah make some of those throws, some the corner routes. Now he had some misses today because his footwork is still a work in progress, as is Blake Hebert's. But when he's stepping right, that ball, just 10-yard outcuts from the inside the hash, just with nothing, just bam, just banging it. So I'm really impressed by just the way he throws. Now the thing is, when we get to the end of spring, I want to see if he's improved with the footwork, the reads, the progressions. Those are all going to be things he needs to improve upon. I thought Blake Hebert was better today also. Still, he's never going to be like a, this year anyway, like a 70% completion guy, right? Like that's not who he is. He's going to make some throws. You're like, but that was a really impressive throws. And he's going to make some throws. You're like, dude, how did you miss that? That's just kind of what he seems to be right now. But today was way better than what we saw the other day in the RVA, because we saw him missing bad in RVA, Trev. He was sharper when he was missing. It was just like just outside of a seam route's hands. CJ had a miss on one of those. But he was better today. He looked more comfortable. He wasn't trying to throw, bottom of the ninth, bases loaded, 2 outs, 3 and 2 full count, and you got the number 1 sign, and you just got to muscle up and throw this sucker by there to win the world. So, that's how every throw was for Blake in practice 1. Like he was trying to, you could tell he was a little too amped up, trying to prove to him. Today he looked a lot looser, just letting her rip, and he looked good. He had some real nice balls today. So they were really the only 2 that I watched. Honestly, guys, I didn't spend a lot of time watching CJ Carr today because if he can't hit passes in RVA, we got a much bigger problem. And we'll have a lot more to say about CJ here coming up. But they were good. I know we're going to transition to Trev to the defense, but I wanted to say something first as we transition over there. I was really impressed with what I saw from the teaching of Charlie Partridge today. And when I say things like this, it's not in they were coached so terribly in the past. It's more of an observation of what he's doing. This is practice 3 or 4. Again, we don't know when all the practices are. We were only given a certain number of the practices that we're going to have availability to. There's other things they're going to be doing without us knowing when they're doing it. So I don't know if this is 3 or 4, but like you look at them, they're already working on advanced technique. Well, with what would have been considered advanced technique in the past, really using their hands well, working on block destruction in an impressive manner, like different types of block destruction that we've seen, watching them do counter moves in the pass game, which is something that, Trev, I have been begging for a while. Like you've got to have an advanced repertoire, and you're seeing them do that today. And here's the thing I loved. There were certain times during the drills when they were doing some pass rush technique that he was having the D tackles do the same exact thing as the D ends, which I was like, yes, that was good to see. But yeah, he is loud and constantly talking, which is a good thing. That's meant to be a good thing. I didn't say he's screaming, because and you could just see the engagement in the back of the row. Like eyes are on coach, listening to coach, because he's always teaching. And you can tell that the players have been told, like, you got to be locked in and listening when, if I'm correcting him, few things make a coach matter, then when I correct the guy and 2 people later, that next guy does the same exact freaking thing that the guy that I just corrected did. That tells me you weren't listening, you weren't paying attention. And you could just see the locked in today from the D line, and that was obviously good to see today as well, Trev.
Oh, it's great. That's a carryover from what I talked about, seeing it in their first practice. Charlie Partridge was very hands-on with the defensive line, literally and figuratively. He's very intentional about how he was coaching them. I'm glad to see that carried over to today. Were there any players that stuck out to you on the D-line? Obviously, you're just one guy. I know it's difficult to see everything. Any players stick out to you?
Yeah, I mean, I focus mostly on the young guys. You know, I mean, you'd see Boubacar, and you can't help but notice just how explosive and long he is. Really like the athleticism that I saw from Rodney Dunham and Ebenezer Utade. I thought Keon Keeley looked really like much more comfortable today than he did in day one. But Rodney and I don't even say like they have a unique explosiveness off the edge, because I think Boubacar had a unique explosiveness off the edge. But to see other guys looking like Boubacar is like, okay, yeah. That's what I want to see. And they're way behind Boubacar, technique-wise, leverage-wise, consistency-wise, and all that. You can tell they're still trying to figure some out. But to see that burst off in drills, just that first step is boom, boom. And then you watch Keon Keeley, who's not too far behind those guys at 30 pounds heavier than they are. And you see the athleticism today. Really like that burst. Was impressed with what I saw from Tion Gray athletically. He's a big kid. He's got very nimble feet for a big kid. Liked what I saw. Elijah Golden athletically is really impressive. He's a very interesting young man, because I've actually kind of noticed him a lot, Trev. When he does a drill, his eyes immediately get to the coach. And when he's in behind, you can see Elijah, I mean, maybe as much, if not more than anybody. When Charlie Partridge is talking to somebody, you can just see Elijah Golden immediately taking his eyes to Charlie Partridge. Like, he's soaking it in. Like, he does not carry himself. None of neither of the 2 DNs, none of the freshman D linemen, because we haven't had a chance to see Tiki yet. None of the freshman D linemen are going through their business like, I've got time. I'm a red shirt. I have time. They're like, what, coach? All right, cool. Let me do that next, because I want to go ball out. Like, I love to see that. They're competing. They're really competing. But Tion Gray moves really well. Armel looked good again today in some of the drills. Today was a little bit – there were some things he wasn't getting with the hand stuff that they were working through, and then he would go do it and work on it and things like that. But it's a big athletic group, and that's the thing you notice, Trev. Like, pound for pound, some guys obviously – I don't expect Tion Gray to have the same initial burst that Francis Brew does at 50 pounds heavier. It's more for his size. Boy, he moves really quick and has really nimble feet for his size. Pound for pound, this is a much more athletic defensive line than I even thought it was going to be. And they had pads on today. So this isn't like you're still going through in just shorts and shirts. So they had pads on today. So that was fun to watch. Didn't get a chance to watch the linebackers much. Really, the only linebacker I saw do anything today is Jaden Osbury, and I just love that he's taking complete command of that room in drills. That's the one thing I could not notice it with. Just every time I'm looking down that way, you just see number 4 destroying the sled or just running around. He's really taking charge of that room.
Let's send it to the back end of the defense, Brian. Let's talk some cornerbacks to wrap up the defensive discussion. What did you see from that group today?
So, liked what I saw from them, Trev. It's a really talented group, honestly. But just today was kind of about some alignment stuff. And what I wanted to see today was who was where. And what we saw was they went. So first thing I loved about the practice today was you had 3 groups. You had the nickels were together, the corners were together, and the safeties were together. You had Javon Codlin with the safeties. You had Andy Bowe with the nickels, and then Aaron Henry with the corners. So they're all doing something completely different that was specific to their position. So if you think about it, what do they got, like 8 corners on campus right now and 6 safeties on campus right now? I believe that's 14 players getting coached by 3 guys. And they're doing very position-specific things. which I love. Then they're all very active coaches. They're taking a ton of reps. There's not a lot of wasted time with the secondary, which is great. But you're seeing the nickels. They were working on zone drops today and route recognition. Like, hey, if you see this route combination, you drop here, you're going to jump. If you see this particular route combination, you want to run up underneath the level 2 guy because the front will then be a no cover zone. Basically, if they throw there, you got to rally. You're going to let him complete a slide route in front of you for 3 yards. You then close and rally and make sure he doesn't get any extra yards, and fine. 1st and 10, you gain 3 yards. Guess what? You do that 2 more times or 4th and 1, right? Like, you got to make sure you overplay that and they bite the thing behind, things like that they're working on. And really getting Christian Gray to understand like the footwork that goes into dropping into zone. It's very different at nickel than it is at outside corner. So just working on that stuff. Same thing with Jaden Sanders. What was interesting is the 3 guys that worked at nickel today. It was Christian Gray, it was Jaden Sanders, and it was Nick Reddish. All looked good, just working on zone drops. Dallas Golden was exclusively in the drill, just in the drills. Like, I don't know what they did at team and 7-on-7 and all that. I don't know. I'm just saying in the drills we saw, exclusively playing outside corner. And he was working with Leonard Moore like the entire time when they were doing stuff during that period that I saw. And so that was really good to see. But they were coaching him up hard. Like Aaron Henry was constantly talking to Dallas Golden about stuff. And I got to tell you, Trev, here's the best way that I could describe the 3rd practice for Dallas Golden today in the spring. His first sprint, this is his first spring. Because he was not here last spring. I don't believe Dallas wasn't at Notre Dame last spring, right? He was a summer enrollee. So here was the big difference for me, Trev. Last year, when we watched Dallas Golden, you could tell he's a really gifted athlete and just a natural football player. But he was a really gifted athlete trying to learn how to play defensive back. Today, he looked like a really gifted defensive back. Just his footwork and and the reason today was important, because what's the thing that we've constantly said was an issue for Dallas? Transitions, right? Right. When playing corner, like that open and run is when he'd get in trouble, because he did his footwork. When he would transition and lose a guy. He'd be great, like, oh, he's in great phase. And then the guy cuts it up and he would lose him. Remember the touchdown to Terrell Anderson against NC State? He'd be in great position and then lose a guy for a step, and then you're beat. They were working on that a lot today. Very aggressive coming up, playing tight line scrimmage. He looked so much more comfortable and natural doing that, and was getting a lot of praise for it. I mean, he's just pedal, and then jam, hands into the guy, open transition, get your eyes back inside, but you still have your body on the court, on the receiver. Looked so much more comfortable than he did a year ago. He's just, you can tell guys that are carrying themselves with a lot of confidence. And right now, Dallas Golden is feeling very confident based on how he's going about just drills and reps. And I don't mean like he's like, yo, what's up? Look at me. I'm the man. It's just the way he moves. Like, I know what I'm doing and I'm good at this. And he's playing with a lot of fire, a lot of aggressiveness. That was great to see, Trev, because you know how high I am on Dallas Golden. He was my number 1 ranked defensive recruit in that 25 class. To see him looking that comfortable that quickly at corner, I feel, my opinion, that they now already realize this kid's going to have to play somewhere. And I think you're going to see Notre Dame really force the issue on him being able to cross-train and either A, start at one of those 2 positions, or he's going to be the guy that is going to be part of the rotation at one, if not both of those positions. And it reminds me a lot of like what we saw from Adon 2 years ago, where it's like we thought this guy was going to be that guy. It's kind of like what we saw from Tay a year ago, where it's like, okay, Jalen Strom won't be here this summer. You sure you want to give Tay Johnson that many reps? Hey, obviously Rod Hurd can't be here in the spring. You sure you want to give Adon? And just immediately, those guys look good. That's how Dallas has now looked in the first 2 practices. I won't put too much hype on it, but like he's just looked that good to me, Trev. And that's really the stuff that I saw today. That he was kind of my emphasis when I was watching the defenses. I want to see how he looked. I thought Christian and Jaden looked really good at corner. But Leonard Moore was out there. He looked fine. He was running around good. Didn't look any side effects of his ankle injury. So it's a long, very talented group, no doubt about it.
Good. Those are all the things that I love to hear. As much as I would love to be at every practice, it's just somewhat of a haul for me to make it up for those shorter ones. But it's a good heck of a practice recap. Love it.
Yeah, man. Thank you. Went a little bit longer than I thought, but there was a lot of good stuff there today.
Brian, let's switch over and talk about the pro day that you and I were both at yesterday. And here on the Irish Breakdown podcast, brought to you by FanDuel, we like to sit and talk about all things going on Notre Dame, whether you are a current or former player. And there was a lot of former standouts from the 2025 roster that were going out in different ways, putting on shows. Now, some guys we've seen before that they were down at the NFL Combine. Defensively, this was our first chance to see any of the potential Notre Dame draft prospects on the defensive side of the ball in this testing capacity, because it was all offensive guys that were down here in Indianapolis. So a lot of different things to take away. It was my first pro day experience. It was really cool to be a part of that. Enjoyed. I was up there and we spent most of the day together. So it was cool to see a lot of those things.
Yeah, get to see like Quentin Nelson was there yesterday. Alex Bars was there yesterday. Ian Book was doing the broadcast at NBC. Rocky Boyman was there with his kids. Did you see that? That was awesome. Obviously Coach Free, all the coaches, a lot of NFL guys. Aaron Glenn was there, the head coach of the Jets. The GM for the Jets, I believe, was there. I think he was there. At least it looked like him. But yeah, that was it's a fun day in that regard, Trev, because you see, Coach and we're sitting there watching, and Niall Ivy walks past, like they're just like day after their big Sweet 16 victory. She's out there to see Coach and see the guys working out and lend her support. So it was a really fun day, man. That's the one thing I do like about pro days. There's things I don't like about pro days, like the fact that they stick us in the sideline where we can't see anything, so there's certain things we can't talk about, but there's also a lot that I really enjoy about the pro day.
It was definitely a cool experience, one that I'm looking forward to again next year, and not getting the cart too far in front of the horse, but next year's pro day might be absolutely nuts.
Oh, we're going to talk about that at some point, Trev. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's going to be absolutely nuts. Yeah. That's for sure. But, Brian, we did see a lot of good yesterday. Like I said, first opportunity to see some of the defensive guys. We saw guys like Jake Tefelsky and Will Pauling perform on the offensive side. So a lot of good from yesterday. Definitely a lot of good.
Well, I was a little disappointed we didn't get to see more from some of the guys that ran. And disappointed not from the standpoint of like, I think they screwed up and I think that they messed up by not doing more. It's a selfish disappointment, right? Like I wanted to see Jadarian run a faster 40. I wanted to see Malachi and Eli run faster 40. So selfishly, but clearly they got advice that, their 40 times are good and were, either not going to hurt or help their draft stocks. And neither one of them ran. They did do some testing. They all ran the 3-cone, not the 3-cone, the 20-yard shuttle. So that was good to see, and we got a chance to watch them perform during that as well. And I'm trying to pull up the numbers, Trev, because they actually had some really good numbers in the drills that they did. So Malachi ran the 3-cone at he did a 4.26, which improved his by 0.09. So that was good, and he was 2 pounds heavier. Jadarian ran a 4.25 3-cone. Or 20-yard shuttle, and he was also up 5 pounds, which was very good to see. So he improved his number, and then Eli ran a 4.37 and a 7.16, which are solid numbers for a tight end. The guy that worked out, did those tests yesterday that didn't perform as well was Emil Wagner. Did not have great numbers. He ran a 4.81 in the 20-yard shuttle and a 7.98 in the 3-cone, which would have been third worst at the combine, at the combine, amongst all the offensive tackles at the combine. I thought he struggled a little bit, and he just is lumbering more than I'd like for him to lumber right now. But great effort, and obviously you're going to love the kid, but I just didn't think he moved the way. I thought he moved better in drills than he did doing the testing stuff. I thought his agility was better when they were working on the bags and going through different drills than he did in the agility stuff.
Yeah, I agree. The other offensive lineman that I was looking forward to seeing in some capacity was Billy Schrouth. do some of the testing drills. I was a little surprised that he didn't. I know that he held out down in Indianapolis because he was, still a little, I guess you'd call it too early removed from his knee injury that he suffered, which ended his season early. I thought that he was going to do some of the testing drills. We didn't see him partake in any of those, which I thought was interesting. But he's put out a lot of good film over the last couple seasons.
And he was moving fine during the O-line drills. Like he did some stuff off the bags and coming off the line. And so he did that. But yeah, I was hoping he could do some of the testing stuff. But he looks good. Like Billy's upper body was very filled out and refined. Like you can tell he's doing a lot of good weight room work. But yeah, I mean, I would like to see him test, but I thought he showed some, he was good coming off the line and bag drills, getting some of that work in. So that was good to see. But I'll tell you one offensive player that we saw work out yesterday, who I was a little surprised that Will Pauling didn't get an invite to the combine because, he's a guy that has been very productive at the Power 4 level, at both Wisconsin and at Notre Dame. And, it's a guy that was in Bruce Feldman's freaks list and all that kind of stuff. I was surprised he did not get a combine invite. He had a pretty good day, Trev. I would say that of the guys who worked out, that I think him, Jared Dawson, and Devontae Smith had the best days. When you look at Will Pauling, 5'9", basically 5'9.5", $183, 9 and 5/8 hands, which is actually pretty good size hands for a 5'9" guy. 29 and 5'8" arms, which are not great, which you expect from a 5'9" guy. 72-inch wing, but he had a 42-inch vertical, which would have been number 2 at the combine and only a half an inch below Deion Burks. He had a 10.8 broad jump, which would have been in the top half of the combine. It would have been top 10 at the combine. And there was a lot of guys that at the combine, a receiver. His 4.37 was really impressive. I actually thought I had him faster than that. And that's when I had finally figured out how to get when I did a 4.7 for Devontae Smith, I was like, I mean, you can put 4.7, but I don't think I did that one well. You know what I mean? And then he ran he ran faster the second time. I thought he's a little faster than that, but they 4.37 official. His agility numbers weren't great. 4.31 in the 20-yard shuttle, 7.01 in the 3-cone. You want a guy that small to be 4.1 in the 20-yard shuttle. You want him to be sub-7 in the 3-cone. He wasn't. But vertically, he's explosive up and that way. And I thought he showed speed. He played faster during routes Saturday than he did, or Tuesday, than he did during the season. Because that was my big frustration with Will Pauling is very rarely did we see him just let it rip speed-wise. And sometimes it's like, dude, you'd have been open if you were like coming off the line. So to see him show that speed in the drills, caught the ball extremely well. There was, 2 incompletions on balls thrown at him, and neither of them were him. They were both overthrows. You could argue the second one was on him. He slowed down when he looked back on the go route. But the other one was like CJ sailed it. I thought his route running was solid. I thought he caught the ball very well, and overall had a real solid day. I mean, to the point where, I'm not a draft expert, but I'm like, how do you not draft a guy that has that level of production at the Power 4 level that ran a 4.37, jumps 42 inches, and oh, by the way, is one of the highest character guys that Notre Dame has on his football team. It's wild listening to Notre Dame players talk about Will Pauling. Like, you guys were with him for 2 semesters. That's it. And to have the kind of impact he's had where guys just constantly mention him and his leadership and all that, you're like, this dude, like, clearly has made an impact on this football team as a human being. Like, I think the testing he did on Tuesday, again, not a draft expert. I'm just giving you my opinion as a football fan. I don't know how you don't draft that guy. I really don't. I'm not saying he's going to be in day 2, but I'm saying, like, I think the testing made him had made him some money yesterday, and then backed it up with a solid day of work in the drills.
Oh, absolutely. There's going to be a team in the later rounds that take a flyer on him for, at the bare minimum, being a special teams guy. Being a returner, somebody that runs a 4.37. He was tied with Malik Benson and Chris Brazzell from Tennessee for his 40 time. impressive vert, and he has the size and the frame of a special teams returner. Not a whole lot of teams in the NFL are putting 6'3" guys back returning kickoffs. You know what I mean? So,
Right.
so I definitely think that he would
Right.
fit that mold. I think he
Well,
did a benefit to his draft stock.
Agree. And Trev, look, he's not a super shifty guy. He's never been that in college. But as a kick returner, that's not necessarily like the primary, that's what you want. Is you want a guy that can be explosive vertically, make one cut and go. And I think he can do that. So I think he definitely helped himself. And look, I was a guy that was very hard on Will Pauling during his Notre Dame career. I was. There were some things I just wanted to see from him that I didn't get a chance to see from him. But you can't question the character, and you can't question the explosiveness and the production. You can't. And he's a guy that has played special teams in his career. I mean, he played 22 snaps this year for Notre Dame on punt coverage. So, it's not like, and actually looking back at his PFF numbers, he did that at Wisconsin. He was on the punt cover team. He did that at Wisconsin, at Wisconsin for 2 years. He was on the punt cover team. So this is a guy that's also, as you said, Trev, he's got experience, not just as a returner, but covering kicks, which is something that's going to help his value as well. Because I would much rather have a guy running a 4.3 down the field to cover somebody than with some toughness than a guy that's going to be running a 4.5 that's going to be doing the same thing.
Oh, absolutely, man. I mean, hey, we got 29 days until the NFL draft to find out if Will Pauling is going to be taken. The one player that we know for sure is going to be taken in the draft, there's multiple, obviously, but Jeremiah Love, he was one of the offensive guys that didn't work out. I just looked on FanDuel, and he actually now has the 4th best odds to go number 3 overall. And he had like the tied 4th best odds to go number 1 overall, but they were at like plus 22,000. Like his odds now to go 3rd overall are at like plus 800. And based on some of the scouts that were there yesterday, I think some of that chatter might be a little interesting.
It was very fascinating to see the Jets head coach and the Jets GM. I think it was him. We weren't sure. I sent you the picture of the GM, and I'm like, I swear we saw this guy wearing Jet stuff there. And then Rick Spielman was there, who's a special assistant for the Jets. But it's like, are they trying to send signals that they might draft Jeremiah Love in hopes of getting someone to trade up to beat, number 3 or number 4 or 5? I mean, he's now being linked. I've seen Trev in mock drafts, but then also just with people talking to him, you've seen Jeremiah now linked a lot at 4 and 5, especially 4, to the Titans. So did the Jets have that many people? Because like, who else were they there to see? Like that, I don't know. I don't know that the Cardinals take him? I don't think so. Probably draft on defense there, but it was interesting to see, Trev, no doubt about, to see the Jets have so much hierarchy there. Of course, the Jets could also be like, guys, we're going to suck again this year, and we're here to see CJ Carr for all we know. But you know what I mean. But that was interesting to see them there. But yeah, we'll see. Yeah. Offensively, obviously, we talked a lot, Trev. There were some defensive guys that we got a chance to see work out. And I know a guy that impressed you and I in the drills and in the testing was Jared Dawson.
Yeah, Jared Dawson performed well. I thought he ran a pretty good 40 time. I mean, he clocked let me see, where is it? 5:08.
Yeah. And I had him a little faster than that, Trev. I had him
you had
high 4.9s. Yeah.
Yeah, you had him at a 4.95 when you did it by hand. So 32-inch vertical, which I thought was pretty impressive for being an interior lineman. Gabe Rubio had a 26-inch vertical as the other interior defensive lineman that went. I thought Dawson had a pretty good day. 9.5, basically 9.9 broad jump. Didn't do the 3-cone, but then he ran the shuttle, and he ran a 4.65. So pretty decent change of direction from somebody that size.
Yeah.
The only gripe, and it's minor, I would have liked to see somebody like that, built like him, 6'1", 280s, to have put up a few more reps on the bench press. I would have liked to see that. He topped out at 20, which I believe is what Eli Raridan and Jadarian Price did down in Indianapolis when they did the 225 bench for reps. So would have liked to see a little bit more there, but I thought he was pretty impressive.
I wish we could have seen the bench and see, like, did he only throw up 20 or did he throw up 26, but they didn't count 6 of them because he didn't extend? That's what I wish they would have let us see. Because if he just got to 20 and he was like, 20, like that's a little different than I did 26, but they didn't count 6 of them. You know what I mean? Like, so I didn't get a chance to see that, but I with you on that. Like, just to so first of all, too, Trev, his arms are very long.
Yeah.
Like, we knew he had a good length, but he was almost 34-inch arms, and he had almost an 82.5-inch wingspan. Just very good for a 6'1" guy. Some perspective, and I put this in the notes that I did on the board. So his 20-yard shuttle of 4.65 that Trev talked about would have been number 1 at the combine. His 9.9 broad jump also would have been number 1 at the combine. So that puts some perspective in how good those numbers were. Because we throw things like 4.65 around. Even we are like, okay, is that good? Because I know if Jadarian Price ran a 4.65, we'd have some problems. You know what I mean? But okay, he's not 285. So then you look and you compare him to the combine, and you're like, oh, okay, wow, that's pretty good. It's not elite because you'll look at past years and guys have had better times, but this year at the combine, those both would have been number 1. And you're doing almost a 10-foot broad jump at almost 285 pounds. You're doing pretty well. So I thought Jared did a nice job. The other guy on defense that I think helped himself a lot today, on Tuesday, Trev, was Devontae Smith. Pretty decent arm length, almost 31.5-inch arms for a guy that measured in at 5'10.5. 75.5-inch wingspan is pretty solid for a 5'10" nickel. Big time vertical, 43-inch vertical. Had a really impressive 4.14 20-yard shuttle, which would have been number 1 at the combine. His vertical would have been number 2 amongst all DBs at the combine, behind only D'Angelo Pons, who had a 0.5 inch better vertical. His broad jump of 11-foot broad jump is insane. Would have been number 2 amongst all DBs at the combine. And again, those things aren't built on like 40-yard dash times. You got to take with a grain of salt, because it's like some tracks are faster than others. I've never heard of a better turf field for jumping. You know what I mean? Like, that's just kind of about your explosiveness. And I thought Devontae had great numbers there. His broad would have been number 2. His 20-yard shuttle would have been number 1. His vertical would have been number 2. The only thing that I thought was a little disappointing, and his 3-cone was very good. The only thing, 6.84, the only thing that I just wish he would have ran a little faster. He ran a 4.55. I think that's the only issue that you're going to see. But and he looked good, real smooth in drills, great change of direction, Trev. Like, I thought he looked really good. I thought Devontae had a really good day. And at one point, Trevor looks at me while he's doing drills, and he just goes, I wish we would have seen more of him this year. Because he only played 8 games because of injuries. He didn't play against Texas A&M. He was limited against Miami, and you're just like, man, I wish we could have. And I was like, dude, spot on. I wish we could have seen a 12-game version of a healthy Devontae Smith, because when he was healthy, he was a good football player for Notre Dame, and you could see why in the drills on Tuesday. I mean, he's a really natural mover, Trev.
Yeah, 100%. We got to see in person yesterday what Notre Dame saw when they were evaluating him when he entered the portal from Alabama. I wish we could have seen him. 8 games, and I think one of those was against Boise State, where he had 6 snaps, and then he sat the rest of the game. And so really wish we could have seen more of Devontae Smith, but I think he did a lot. He was very smooth in the on-field drills, caught the ball well, too, in the on-field drills. I know sometimes with DBs, it can be a little bit hit or miss, but he relatively soft hands for a nickel guy. He's not just a big-bodied, meet you at the line of scrimmage type of nickel. Definitely can drop back into coverage. There's a reason that I think throughout his collegiate career as a starting nickel, he's never given up a touchdown. So he's another player that I think really, really helped out his draft stock yesterday. But Brian, as cool as it was watching all the drills, and as cool as it was seeing people run the 40 and do the 3-cone, there was an attraction that kind of stole the show yesterday, and it was when they were running routes. And it was impressive.
Yeah. First of all, I thought Malachi had a really nice day running routes. Sharp, showed good speed, caught the ball well. There was one throw that I even said to you, I was like, I think he overthrew him. And Malachi just kind of turned that little extra gear on and used his long arms to go get the ball. Because as we know, Malachi is a very long athlete, very good wingspan, and really impressive. A really good arm length and really impressive wingspan, because wingspan isn't just about your arms. It's also about how wide are your shoulders, and he's got pretty broad shoulders. Had a good day. Will Pauling had a good day. Eli Raridan caught the ball real well. Jadarian caught the ball well. But the guy that really I think was the most impressive. I was standing there with a former Notre Dame or a former NFL football player, and we're just kind of chatting before, and I said, keep an eye on that guy right there, talking about CJ. And I think maybe 5 throws in, maybe he's like, dude, I see what you're talking about. Like, so he's throwing with an NFL ball and just looked natural, Trev. I mean, his timing, there was one throw where he's throwing a comeback route, and the guy from Indiana State's like just planting his top, and he comes out of the drill, and CJ just hits him right in the comeback, right in stride. I'm like, he's never thrown to this kid before today. And he completed every pass he threw to the kid. I wouldn't mind that kid playing for – I got to go look up what his numbers were, but do you remember that one post route that he accelerated and ran under?
Yeah.
But, I mean, his arm strength yesterday was elite, Trev. I mean, not arm talent. That's always been elite. His arm strength looked elite to me. He's banging 20-yard dig routes on ropes, and he's not muscling it. He's just zipping it through. His arm speed was so much better because what was the one issue that we've talked about with CJ from his freshman year, from his redshirt freshman year? He aimed a lot of stuff. The timing was great, the reads, but he aimed a lot of stuff. He didn't just let the ball rip enough, especially on deep balls. I mean, he would miss outside go routes, and you're just like, dude, let it rip, man. Like you're aiming it. Couple times we saw him let her rip the post route to Malachi for a touchdown. Like that was CJ, just let her rip, buddy. Let it, And we saw him letting it rip yesterday, Trev, and it was impressive. And there was a route, and one was run by Will Pauling, the other was run by the kid from Indiana State, where CJ did an under center play action boot bomb. He threw the ball, his back foot was around the 33. And they caught it at the 5, the other 33. So just some quick math, 17 plus 45, 62. 62 yards in the air from where CJ threw it to where he caught it. Did that twice and hit the guy in stride both times. His go routes were bombs, 50-plus yard bombs. And again, you're putting something on it. He's not Josh Allen. He's not flicking it 60 yards, But he's put something on it, but he's not muscling it, meaning he's got to really wind up because you won't have time to always do that in the NFL. You got to be able to hit your drop and let that sucker rip. And he did that. I thought his arm speed was great, but his feel for placing the ball is elite. And look, I was there when at Jimmy Clausen's pro day. I remember I was on the beat. I remember watching Jimmy inside Loftus during his pro day, and that was a thing of beauty. I saw Everett Golson's pro day. This was as good arm talent as I've seen at a pro day from what I saw from CJ Carr yesterday. It was impressive. Now, he had some misses, but every miss he had was long. It was never off target. There was like one throw that was slightly behind a guy early. Everything else was like just corner routes on the money, dig routes on the money. There was one deep over route. So it's about a 25-yard over route. He's inside the left hash, and he throws it to the right out near the numbers to Davis Sherwood and just boom, rope on the money. That was as impressive of a throwing performance as I've seen. And look, I'm not trying to be hyperbolic. There's no benefit to me or CJ Carr for me to hype it up to be something that it wasn't. That was as good of a throwing day as I've seen from a Notre Dame quarterback at pro day. And I was at Jimmy Clausen's pro day, and I was at Everett Golson's pro day.
And it wasn't even CJ's pro day.
Exactly.
Which is hilarious.
Right.
Oh, man. I'm with you. His arm talent is exceptional. I thought his arm strength was exceptional. Look, we just got done talking about how Will Pauling moves really well vertically. He overthrew him twice. It's tough to overthrow a guy 50 yards down the field that just got done running a 4.37.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? It's and the misses weren't overthrown because it was 5 yards off the sideline. It was overthrown 5 yards down the field in the field of play. I thought it was exceptional. His timing is great. Even on some of the shorter routes, his timing was great. Ball got there quick. That's for sure. Not too quick out of breaks off of, Texas routes or speed outs or things like that. The ball was on the money. It was a very impressive day from CJ, and it wasn't even his pro day.
Right. he helps his teammates, though, because he allowed them to kind of, be crisp and not have a bunch of bad balls. He, allowed them to show their hands. And I commented twice, like, especially when Malachi catches it, the ball, it's quiet when Malachi catches the ball. Now, part of that's the thrower. I don't remember. There was only 2 go routes that had a slight wobble. Everything else was just spirals. I mean, it was impressive.
Yeah, it was.
Somebody asked, CJ put on a little bit more armor too. He's definitely thicker than he was as a redshirt freshman. He's definitely spent some good time in the weight room. And here's the concern whenever a young quarterback fills out quickly, does he get tight? And for a quarterback, that will mess up your arm motion. It'll make it tighter. It'll make it more compact. You won't have the same limberness. All right, making up a word. Not an issue for CJ. His arm motion is the same as it always been, even with the extra muscle. That's important. So it was a good day. It was a very good day.
Brian, let's switch gears and talk about the offensive line here in the Irish Breakdown podcast, brought to you by FanDuel, and talking about the offensive linemen that are still currently here. We talked about the practice recap. We talked about Notre Dame's Pro Day. Let's talk about some of the offensive linemen that are currently enrolled and kind of their outlook on this season. And what we're going to do here in this segment of the show today is we're talking about whose emergence is going to mean the most for this season. And obviously, we're going to touch on all the starting offensive linemen or the projected starting offensive linemen, but this is an extremely important conversation to have.
It is because, Trev, we're starting to get a little bit more excited every day about the potential of the offensive line. And, it's even when you're like watching certain guys at the pro day, you're like, I loved what that kid brought to the table, but like, that's just not what we're used to seeing from a Notre Dame offensive tackle. Like we're used to seeing the, not even the Joe Waltz and Ronnie Stanleys. And so, we're used to seeing the, Liam Eichenberg and Robert Hainsey and, even guys like that. And I just don't think they had that at tackle the last couple of years. They had good players. You don't go 24-4, and almost half your games are against top 25 teams if you're not good there. But there's another level. We start thinking about that and like, man, this guy just looks different. This guy, you start getting excited about it, but then you're like, man, but there's a lot to show. So we start thinking about was, if you look at this offensive line and you talk about each guy taking the jump and what it would mean for the team. And so what Trev and I thought would be fun to talk about today is part of a rundown, because it'll be a little quicker segment. It's not like a full offensive line breakdown, is whose emergence this offseason would have the biggest impact on the performance of the offensive line. And the reality is the reason topics like this are fun, and it was kind of taken from a Beisel hold question that we had. So kind of taken a little bit from that. And what makes a Beisel hold question good, submission good, is it's not obvious. It's like, who would you rather have at quarterback? Beisel hold each of these quarterbacks: CJ Carr, Evan Sharpley, and Pat Dillingham. Well, guy, like that's kind of an easy one, right? Like that. Like, who would you rather have? Brady Quinn, Jimmy Clausen, Everett Golson, or CJ Carr? Beisel. I'm like, well, that's a lot tougher Beisel hold, and so this is interesting because there's a case to be made for all 5 guys to some degree, Trev. So this comes down to, it's kind of 2 things for me. And then, Trev, I'd like to hear what your thought process was first. Is, for me, it wasn't just who plays the most important position or who has the chance for the biggest jump, like who may become the star. It was whose emergence is most important to this line achieving its ultimate success. And that's what I thought was fascinating. So I'd like to hear your thought process, and then give me the 2 guys. And if you want to talk through the other 4, go for it. But just at least a couple of the guys that, because I know for both of us, there was some back and forth. But who are the guys that when you went through this, like, okay, these are the guys that I considered. Here's why I considered these 2. But then give me who your top guy was.
Yeah, I mean, everything that went into my process, you know me, I'm very consistent with how I do things. And so continuity was a big piece. And I looked at what were some of the overall positions on the offensive line that have lacked continuity over the last couple of seasons. And one of the weird things after kind of now, and when I mean continuity, I don't mean continuity in the level of play. I mean continuity of who was playing these positions. And as crazy it is to say, from 24 to 25, Notre Dame hasn't had one of their starting tackles for one game. It's crazy to think about. They didn't have Anthony Knapp in the national championship game. They had him for every game up until then.
Yeah.
Had him for every game in 2025. And Emil Wagner didn't miss a game the last 2 years.
It's the one thing you could count on Emil Wagner. He was going to show up every Saturday.
Yes.
Or in some
100%.
cases Sunday.
Yeah.
A couple cases.
Sometimes a Sunday.
Yeah.
Sometimes
during the postseason, a Wednesday.
Yeah, man. It just any one of the days, really. But
Right.
so continuity played a big factor in this one for me for different reasons. Injuries or fluxes to lineups or those couple of things over the last couple of seasons, really since 2023. And then the other piece was who can the offense turn to in a very crucial moment? You brought up something in a show earlier this week, or it might have been late last week, maybe when we were doing a mailbag. But Brian, we were talking about, you know, when you need it. One of the things that you loved about the 2017 offensive line is when they had to go get a yard, you knew that they could just go get a yard because they had guys on that line that you could rely on. Q, McGlinchey, Bars, Mustapher, players like that. Who emerges in those roles for this offensive line? And that's kind of what whittled down my process, I guess you could say. So starting out, one of the guys that I considered for a brief moment, and this has nothing to do with his level of performance. There's just one thing I got to see from him. I thought about Ashton Craig for a little bit. For him, it's just staying healthy.
Right.
And I can't consider his emergence just health.
That's right.
You know.
Are you arguing, Trev, that if he just is healthy and is the same guy he's been the 3 years he's gotten some starts, we're good?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if Ashton Craig is just healthy and plays every regular season game, he's the best center that Notre Dame has had since Jarrett Patterson. I mean, if he just stays healthy, and I'm confident in saying that. So he was in that conversation for me, but then it slowly faded. Thought about Sullivan Abshire, but then it's kind of like, okay, his emergence would mean a lot, but there's still that question mark around Jagasaw. Matty Augustine's really starting to come on. So it's like,
did Vince put you up to saying that? Best center since Jarrett Patterson? Because you know Vince is a big Ashton Craig guy. I didn't know if Vince offered you like a free meal next time you're up this way if you show some love to Ashton Craig. I'm just checking to make sure there's no. We don't do corruption here, Trevor, right? We're not DC politicians. We don't take bribes to say things, okay? Those will make sure these are your own thoughts and not Vince putting those things in your head.
Vince, don't worry.
Because you know Vince feels the same exact way. I mean, Vince has said, like, if he's healthy for an entire season, he's an All-American. You know, I mean, so I just had to get that. You transition so fast to the next guy. I was like, hold on a second. Let's rewind a second. I need to make sure that this is real stuff. But no, I mean, but in all seriousness, you're absolutely correct. His is just be there every day.
Yeah.
Do that and you're fine.
Yeah. Not to worry. Vince didn't put me up to anything, but while we're on the topic of Vince, he's a great guy. So
yes,
throwing that out there as well. Super cool.
All right, Vince Strobridge.
But but once I started getting into my top three, I started thinking, okay, who can this offense start to rely on? Thought about Gerby Lambert. He's making that transition to going from the interior to playing tackle, a position that in just one day that I got to see him looked very natural in what he got to do. Has the opportunity to be their best offensive lineman this year. Next guy I thought about was Will Black. And it's like, okay, redshirt freshman stepping into the lineup, all the physical tools. He's 6'7". He's 316 pounds, very athletic, good bend, moves very well. But then I thought about, okay, is that a lot of pressure to put on a redshirt freshman first time start of like your emergence is going to mean the most? Potentially, but he's also giving you something at offensive tackle that, especially at left tackle, that you haven't had since Joe Alt left after the 2023 season. And it's a very rangy, very long, athletic guy, comfortable playing in space. And so then I thought about, okay, whose emergence is going to mean the most? And for me, that's Anthony Knapp, their most experienced returning starting offensive lineman. there hasn't been a whole lot of continuity on the interior of Notre Dame's offensive line for one reason or another. In 24, you had injuries. Sam Pendleton didn't necessarily work out. You had an injury at center. There was some thought about, okay, does Rocco go to right guard or left guard? Does he leave? Billy Schrouth gets hurt. So a lot of different questions there. I think on the interior of Notre Dame's offensive line, for what they want to do and have success in this season, short yardage success, red zone success. I said this a couple of months ago. Number 54 needs to take a little bit of onus in this offensive line room and say, hey, when we need a yard or two, you run behind 54. And I think that's the opportunity that's at stake for him. We know about his short area quickness. We know how strong he is for being 304 pounds. And he's now your most experienced offensive lineman, kind of by a lot.
Like
he has 27 career starts. Yeah, man. The next closest guy is 15 games behind him, and that's a tie between Ashton Craig and Gerby Lambert at 12. So
yeah, and not only that, Trev, but like you said, other than like a little bit in the first half against Miami, where he clearly wasn't in condition to play, which I think neither was Emil, which is why I think had a lot more to do with just all the load management they were doing. He's played over 1,500 snaps the last 2 years. Yeah, it's a lot of snaps. A lot of snaps.
In big moments, man, he's starting left tackle in the Sugar Bowl, on the road against Miami, home and on the road against Texas A&M. He's playing in the Orange Bowl. So
he's played in 2 USC games, right? Exactly.
Oh,
lot of snaps in 2 years. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. So he's that guy for me. Twofold. One, because I think that he gives that prowess to the interior of the offensive line that Billy Schrouth gave, but we also kind of have to have an honest conversation of Billy Schrouth gave it when he was on the field. Injury issues in both 24 and 25. Anthony Knapp has only missed one game in his career so far. Knock on wood, that continues to happen this upcoming season. I think he gives you that consistency, that run blocking prowess on the interior of the offensive line that they need consistently week over week. And two, I think it's going to go a long way to kind of hush some of the crazy narratives on either side about him amongst the fan base, giving that consistency in the offensive line. I think it will. Personally.
It'll shut up one side of the debate. The other side's gonna be like, "See, we told you he was amazing." You know what I mean? Like that.
Very true.
What you're saying, true.
Very
but
true.
Like, and I think he can be like only the side that is always like, no, Anthony Knapp could, blow Mikael Kamara off the ball for 98-yard touchdown. You're like, yeah, but he shouldn't be playing left tackle. It's like, okay, man, we get it, but like, can we just enjoy that great block for a second? You know what I mean? Like,
right.
I don't care. He only gave up 7 pressures all year. He still sucks. And it's like, well, okay, I guess there's no winning you over. But the people that like then want to convince themselves he's the second coming of Joe Alt, just because they, they're going to even be more emboldened.
Sure.
But
that's a good
one
point.
side of the debate. What we'll finally have some harmony around Anthony Knapp, because we'll all agree he's great inside. And that's where we'll find some harmony. Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So all of those things led me to having Anthony Knapp as my number one guy, Brian.
Yeah. Here's why I thought about. So like I had an immediate player I went to. It was like no brainer, and then he's ended up not being my pick. And then Anthony Knapp was also one that I thought about. Like I kind of worked through all of it. And I was like, Gerby, no, because it's like I just kind of assume Gerby's going to be really good at right tackle. And that's also why I eventually didn't spend a lot of time on Anthony Knapp, even though he was one of the first names that popped in my head, because it's almost like my level of expectation on Anthony Knapp is unfairly high. I'll admit that. It's unfairly high. I'm just assuming he's going to make a natural transition to guard. I'm just assuming he's going to be as good inside as I think he should be. And I think your point about just being there every day is huge. I mean, you talk about Notre Dame has played in the last 2 years 28 games. They've had the same starting lineup in 27 of those 28 games at tackle. And if you look at guard in the last 2 years, you've had Sam Pendleton started games at guard, Rocco Spindler started games at guard, Billy Schrouth has started games at guard, Gerby Lambert started games at guard. And the only guy that ever did it in any kind of long streak was Gerby. because it was Sam at left guard, then Billy at left guard, and then right guard started off as Billy, then went to Rocco, and then this past year, Billy's the starting left guard for a while. It's like you actually thought we were going to have some continuity for a while. And then in game, 6, Ashton goes down, and then, or no, that was game 5. No, that's game 6. Then in game 7, Billy goes down. Like, here we go again, and so now this was the most stable year we had at guard because there was just the one injury, you know what I mean? And it's like, but yeah, just being able to say, hey, we can count on our left guard to show up every day, which Anthony's been able to do. And I still wonder if Anthony Knapp, I won't get into that. But like to your point, he's answered the bell, except when there was like an injury, they just said he can't play. It wasn't like he sprained his wrist and he's like, I just can't deal with the sprain. You know what I mean? And believe me, Anthony Knapp, like every other football player, has had plenty of bumps and bruises, but he answers the bell every day. That's great to see. And hopefully he can do that again. That's why I couldn't go with him, because I'm assuming he's going to be that way. I'm assuming Gerby's going to be that way. So the easy answer was Will Black. That was my initial answer. I'm like, look, you got to solidify left tackle. And, kind of talk myself through all these different things. Like, look, you've got to solidify left tackle. How much of a jump can he make? What if he makes like a Joe Alt year 2 type of jump? Or, what if he makes like a Ronnie Stanley type year 2 at jump, where Ronnie didn't play a whole lot as a freshman. Remember, he had an elbow injury that, he played 3 games and then, didn't play the rest of the year with an elbow injury, and he was able to take his red shirt because red shirt rules were different back then. And then he comes out in 2014 and he earns a starting job. No, wait a minute, hold on. No, it was 2012 that he had the elbow injury. And then 2013, he started at right tackle. As a redshirt freshman and played pretty well on an offensive line that gave up 8 sacks all year, and he's playing opposite a Hall of Famer, an eventual NFL Hall of Famer in Zach Martin in his first year as a starter. No pressure there, buddy. And then, of course, he does what he does. You think about that, and you look at it and say, okay, can he make that kind of jump? And you're like, does he even need to make that kind of jump? What if he's just a solid left tackle? And I thought that, okay, that's going to be the one. But then it come down to it, Trevor. I'm like, this is an elite 5-star player. Like, yeah, it'll have an impact. But there's another direction I went, Trev. And here's where I went. Sullivan Abshire. And here's why. Will Gerby Lambert playing like a big-time player have an impact on the offensive line? Yeah. Ashton Craig's out there every week. Will that be huge? Yeah, it will be. Will Anthony Knapp's emergence at left guard have a big impact on this team? Sure, of course it will. What about Will Black stepping up as a redshirt freshman as a freshman All-American caliber player at left tackle? Will that have an impact? Of course, all of them have an impact. But here's the thing. We have seen before that one spot on the offensive line can create problems that really hurts the entire offensive line from being the best it can be. We just named 4 individuals that have a chance to be really, really good players for various reasons. But you remember in 2016 when the offensive line had a lot of problems? People forget they had a 2nd and a 3rd team All-American on that offensive line. And Alex Bars had a pretty darn good season at right tackle. Sam Mustipher was solid at center that year. I mean, it was Sam's first year in the starting lineup. And, he had typical first-year bumps and bruises along the way, like a lot of first-year starters have in 2016. But what you saw, Trev, was there was one position that they just struggled to get going, like at all. And that was right guard. And it wasn't until later in the year when they inserted Mark Harrell into the lineup that it kind of just like slowed down enough to where it was like, okay, we can survive. And the line played better down the stretch, like a lot better down the stretch. But even with 2 All-Americans, you were in a situation where you could not your line could not reach its full potential with Alex Bars, Sam Mustipher going right to left, Quentin Nelson, and Mike McGlinchey in your starting lineup, and Nelson and McGlinchey and Quentin were returning starters. Alex Barr started multiple games in 2015. If you remember when Quentin got hurt against USC, Alex stepped in, did great, and I believe started the next couple games. So you had experience on that line. But the reason they couldn't play to their full potential is because they had that 1 weak link. Now, I don't think that Sullivan Abshire will be a weak link. Why do I say that? Because he played 5 games. He started 5 games last year, and he was not a weak link. And they did play one really good defense in Pitt, and he more than held his own. But my thing for Sullivan is Sullivan could ultimately end up being the difference between a really good offensive line and an elite offensive line. And he doesn't have to be elite to be that guy. He just has to be steady. Look, Sullivan does not have, I would argue, that every guy in the starting lineup that we just talked about has either day 1 or early day 2 talent. That includes Ashton Craig. I think he's got second-round draft pick talent. Knapp, Black, Gerby, I've said before, all have first-round talent. The Gerby and Black were 5-star players for my board, and I've been banging that Anthony Knapp can be a first-round pick as an interior guy since his freshman year. I mean, he looks like that type of player. And so that's why my frustration has been, don't hate on Anthony Knapp as a player because you don't think he's a left tackle and then just assume he's not a good player. I understand the fact that he did a solid job as a left tackle, even though that's not his best position, in my opinion. Now he's playing what I think where he's going to be most comfortable. Will there be an adjustment period? Yes, but he's just a true junior. I think he has day 1 talent as well. In my opinion, I could be wrong. It's my opinion. Sully's not that guy. I think Sully can be a draftable player, no question. But I don't think he's like, oh my gosh, this is the guy that's second coming of Aaron Banks. But if he is just the best version of himself, it's a good football player that can be like a Tom. He reminds me a lot of like what Tommy Kramer was in the 2020 offensive line. Tommy wasn't as good as Liam Eichenberg. He wasn't as good as Aaron Banks. He wasn't as good as Jarrett Patterson when he was healthy. I don't think he was as good as Robert Hainsey. He was their number 5. But he's a good football player. And if Sully can be that without the injuries that Tommy kept having to deal with, but just be a more consistent version of what you were last year, I think that shores up the offensive line and makes sure that they're 5 across good football players. Because if all the things we talked about are true, but they can't settle on that right guard, that can impact everything else. Because when one guy struggles, it impacts the right tackle and impacts the center. And then the center struggling to overcome this guy, then impacts the left guard, so forth and so on. Can't have a weak link. And if you're, quote, because like here's the reality, guys. If I gave you a starting lineup of Joe Alt, Quentin Nelson, Zach Martin, Jeff Fain, and Aaron Taylor, guess what? Somebody's got to be 5. They're not all equal talent. Somebody's got to rank 5. Right now, the 5 guys we talk about, in my opinion, Sullivan Abshire is your 5, if you're ranking them. But if he can be the best version of himself, that's a darn good flipping 5, and he's a 2 or a 3 for a lot of other teams. That could be the difference between you've got a really good line and you've got the best line in the country, and it's going to lead you to a championship. That's the key. You got to make sure you don't have that weak link. And if you're number 5, so we've eliminated weak link, now it's like, okay, but what level of player is he? Is he just I can hold on for dear life and get us through a game? Or is he like, dude, I'm a solid football player, and I'm going to do my job every day, and I'm going to do it hard. And I'm going to do what I'm supposed to do. I'm going to play with good technique, and I'm going to give you everything I got. If that's what we get for Sullivan Abshire every week next year, then I think this offensive line is going to be special. And I think a lot of people are kind of writing him off and, just wait till Jagasol comes back and all this other kind of stuff. What about moving Matty Augustine in there? And that's kind of where the question came from Father J-Pop. It was about, Matty Augustine stepping in the top 5, and it just got me thinking like, well, if Matty Augustine plays to his full potential and Sullivan Abshire plays to his full potential, I think Sullivan Abshire is still in the top 5. And I don't know that a lot of people view it that way. And that's why I think his emergence above all others is that final piece to what could be a really special puzzle. And that's why his emergence this offseason as a more consistent version and getting to be the best version of himself, in my opinion, is going to have the biggest impact on the 2026 offensive line. What say you, Mr. Trowbridge?
No, I think that's a strong argument. If he can just be like what Steve Elmer was to that 2015 offensive line. We think back to that offensive line with a lot of fond memories, I guess you could call it. It was the emergence of Quentin Nelson, Ronnie Stanley at left tackle. You had Nick Martin at center. You had Mike McGlinchey at right tackle. But that right guard spot, Steve Elmer was able to hold it down, and not just hold it down as in he's the fifth and he's just not the reason why you're losing games, but he's the reason why the offensive line was dominating in that fashion. I agree. I like that pick a lot. Yeah, I really do.
Yeah, and it's not saying that the other guys aren't important, because, I mean, the end of the day, the very end of our statement was they all have to play well.
Oh,
It's just a lot of it's just like I kind of assume certain guys are going to play well. And if they don't play well, we've got a much bigger problem. Like if Gerby struggles, if Knapp struggles, if you know Ashton Craig struggles, like we have a much bigger problem. Like, why are these guys regressing?
Yeah.
Like that's because here's my thing, Trev. If Ashton Craig, you said it about Ashton Craig, if he's just be there every week. Play like you've been playing, just do it every week. If Anthony Knapp is the same player at left guard that he was last year at left tackle, if Gerby Lambert's the same player at right tackle as he was at right guard this year, doesn't improve, they're all still three pretty good football players. Anthony Knapp was a freshman All-American in 2024. Gerby was a freshman All-American in 2025, and Ashton Craig's been a pretty good football player. Now it's like, okay, Will Black, what's he going to be? But then it's like, okay, but there's this unsung guy that the only time people talk about him is like, who's going to beat him out? You know what I mean? And my whole thing is, we forget this is a guy that Harry Heastand wanted big time, and a guy that Joe Rudolph thought highly enough of to say, we're going to train you at all 5 positions. Like, think about that. What level of trust does it show you that Joe Rudolph said, hey, Sully, we need you to be able to play left tackle, left guard, and right guard. And, oh, by the way, even though you're almost 6'8", just FYI, we're also going to play you at center. You know, like what does that say about that kid? I think it says a lot, Trev. I think it says a whole lot about him. And speaks to just how this staff views him. I mean, if you look at his career, Sullivan Abshire has played left guard. He has played he has literally played all 4 of the 5 positions that he's gotten snaps at in college outside of center. And we've seen him take center snaps. I believe he took some in the blue gold game last year. Did he not?
Mm-hmm.
He definitely didn't practice. He has played 29 snaps in his career at left tackle. He's played 311 snaps at left guard. He's played 36 snaps at right guard. He's played 24 snaps at right tackle. I think it says a lot about how the staff views him. But now it's time for you to go from the ultimate Swiss Army knife to a you're a specialist. You're a right guard that moves people. And that's going to be a big key for him.
Well, we said it at the start of the season, Sullivan Abshire's emergence is going to just be letting him plant him in one spot and let him grow there. That's going to be the biggest thing with him. Look, we talk about it on the show all the time. Notre Dame is favorites on FanDuel to win the national championship, and they have a Heisman favorite. They're one of 2 teams at the Power 4 level that are being projected to go undefeated this year. You're not going to be able to do any of those things unless your offensive line is shored up, and that means all guys. We talked about the 2023 offensive line before that. Joe Alt, top 5 NFL draft pick. The rest of the offensive line,
Right. Let me add. They had a first-round draft pick on the left tackle. They had a second-round draft pick at right tackle, and they had an all-ACC player at center because Zeke Correll went on to be an all-ACC player the next year at NC State, and their line still struggled. They got embarrassed by Duke, embarrassed by Louisville. Why? Because they couldn't all 5 play together at the same time. Some weeks Pat Coogan play well, Rocco would struggle. Some weeks Rocco would play well and Pat would struggle. Some weeks they both play well and Blake Fisher would struggle. You know what I mean? It was frustrating. You know, we saw how bad left guard ruined the 2021 offensive line. And then it wasn't until Andrew Kristofic got thrust into the lineup late in the year, and then Joe Alt finally actually left tackle and left guard was a problem for Notre Dame in 2021. And then they put Joe Alt as a true freshman and Andrew Kristofic in left guard, and all of a sudden, the line as a whole starts playing better football, and they play their best football of the year. So getting the right 5 and getting everybody on the same page is huge. The other thing about Sullivan Abshire too, Trev, that I like is he had every reason in the world to transfer after the season. I mean, he just started 5 games. I'm quite confident in saying that there were teams that were very interested in him should he jump in the portal. He's not at all guaranteed a starting spot. Everybody in the world's talking about he's going to be the odd man out. If they move Anthony Knapp, he's the odd man out because when Jagasol comes back, he's just holding a place until Charles Jagasol comes out. Why did he not transfer? Because he's bought into what – I mean, first of all, he's close to his degree, but he's bought into what they're doing. And he's also, I think, confident enough in his own abilities to say, okay, fine, bring in that guy, move that. I'm going to go do what I do. And I think I'm curious to see what he looks like when the pads come on and we get a chance to see them do some bang because I thought he looked good. Him and Gerby looked really good in the first day of practice. We talked about it and didn't get a chance to see him do much today, but I really want to see if Sully takes the experience he gained last year and can turn it into, hey, that's the guy we thought we were getting coming out of high school. And I think we've kind of written him off a little bit as a fan base, but I think he's very, very important to this team's chances in 2026. Could he be for Notre Dame what Pat Coogan was for Indiana this year? Pat Coogan wasn't their best center or their best offensive lineman. Carter Smith was. He wasn't even top 3 as far as his talent, but he was the heart and soul of that group, and he was that steady fighter, gave you everything he had. I think Sully could be that for this group. I really do.
Brian, here in the next couple parts of the Irish Breakdown podcast brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel, we're kind of widening the scope a little bit, and we're talking about the offense and the defense as a whole. And now, keep in mind here, we're talking about the 3 things that we want to see accomplished, but looking at it through a spring lens. Ideally, yes, we could sit here and talk about better red zone offense and better blitz packages and this and that, but this is something that we have a gauging tool for to see if they can accomplish it over the course of the spring. And if a lot of these things get accomplished, a byproduct of that will be the red zone offense getting better or the defense being better in this situation or on 3rd down or on 4th down, what have you. So situational football success is going to be a byproduct of some of the things that we're talking about here. Where we're going to start is on the offensive side of the ball. There are 3 things that each of us want to see this offense really get done from really it started a couple days ago to when the end of spring hits towards the end of April, and then hopefully they carry that into the fall. Definitely some important things in here that this team needs to accomplish.
Yeah, there's no doubt, Trev. And we've talked before, you're not going to go into the spring saying, okay, as long as they can get the red zone offense fixed, as long as they can improve their 3rd down offense or the 3rd and short offense, or the defense has got to get better on 3rd down. And man, their 3rd down package is a problem. I've never seen a team give up more 3rd and longs in my life as what Notre Dame gave up last year, including against some bad teams. Stanford had and you got to get better here. To me, the foundation is being laid for that coming out of spring, but I don't think you fix those things in spring, nor do I think you're necessarily trying to. Why are we going to be better on 3rd down next year? It's because we have attention to detail. We're physical. Guys know the offense. They're in the playbook. There's a trust between the quarterback and the offensive line, so he can maybe mix up the cadence to maybe get some offsides. There's more trust between the quarterback and the receivers that, hey, in this situation, I'm going to go to this guy. I'm going to go to that guy. There's all these type of things. The timing in our blitz packages has got to get better. There's all these things that go into those results that are more of the focus in the spring. And how can we talk about, man, I think I need to really improve your 3rd and short if you don't know the starting offensive line is going to be. Hey, the so-and-so pass game's got to get better. Well, who's the quarterback throwing to? We don't know the answers to that yet. So how can we find those answers? So a lot of this stuff really, Trev, is in my opinion, foundational stuff. And to kind of build on what we talked about in the last segment, like the last point of the rundown, it starts up front. And before you can get to being better in short yardage, being more consistent running the ball, giving up fewer TFLs or missed assignments, because Notre Dame was pretty good last year and TFLs allowed. They were solid last year in that regard, Trev, despite the fact that I don't think they blocked as well as necessarily as what their ranking would otherwise dictate. So when you look at Notre Dame last year, they ranked 28th in the country in tackles for loss allowed. I would argue a big reason why they ranked 28th is because of Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price. Need I remind you of a play against Navy where he got thrown down basically 3 yards behind the line, but he had such great balance that he didn't go down, gets up and runs for a 40-something yard touchdown. Well, that looks great on the stat. Oh, look at the offensive line. Great blocking, but nope. Terrible blocking. It's like the touchdown that Kyron Williams had against North Carolina. Remember the 91-yard touchdown run he had? He got hit 3 times behind the line. That wasn't on the O-line. That was on Kyron. You know what I mean? Like, they weren't the reason that went for 91. You could say that Michael Mayer, and I think was it Deion Colsey that had a really good downfield block on that player? Was it Lorenzo Styles? One of the receivers and Michael Mayer had really good downfield blocks. But that was like 95% on Kyron and then 5% on the downfield blocking. 0% on the offensive line. Actually, you could argue they had a 90% improvement on. They were 90% responsible for that play because they actually blocked it well. Maybe it's only a 12-yard gain. But because they got destroyed, Kyron has to do all this stuff and break it out the backside for a 91-yard touchdown. So I guess I'm looking at this all wrong, Trev, all wrong. But I got to know the biggest thing about this team is, do you come out of the spring knowing what your offensive line is going to look like? That's the biggest thing for me, Trev. And I know you're going to add on to the offensive line part, but that's the biggest thing for me is, do you know who your 5 is? Were they able to get a lot of work together, at least 4 of them, because we're not going to see Ashton Craig, but were 4 of the 5 able to stay healthy, stay in the same spot, and really develop as one unit to where coming out of the spring, we know who our line is, and they're rolling. And then if something happens to Ashton Craig, you still got your 5 because now you did get your 5 together with Joe Otton getting the work he's getting with the first team so far in fall camp. Now, they may give Cam Herron some reps in number 1. I don't know. We probably, unless we see it in the last practice we're able to, we probably won't see that, even if it does happen, because we're not going to see any more team until that final practice. We're just going to get to see individual stuff. But that's the big thing is, do we know who the line is? Were they able to develop a foundation of continuity, a foundation of togetherness to the point where we feel like, okay, I know the floor of what this line can be coming out of spring? If you can't get that answered, then I don't know that anything else necessarily coming out of the spring matters a whole lot.
Agreed. It's going to be a strong foundation to this offensive line. And once you have that, can you develop some sort of an identity? That's been over the course of the last couple of seasons. That is one thing that I think you could argue that Joe Rudolph-led offensive lines, by and large, they just don't have an identity. Or you could argue that their identity is inconsistency, which is not something that you want to have. And I mean that in every sense of the word, with the starting lineup, with health, how they play week to week. Their pass protection against Miami looked vastly different than their pass protection against Texas A&M to varying degrees. They're different defensive lines. I understand that. But can you develop somewhat of an identity where week in and week out, can you go out and run block every game like you did against USC? Where your sole purpose on every single play is to take the will of the guy standing up and lining up across from you. Because the week before that, they did not do that against NC State. So does it have to be a prime time under the lights game against a rival and you got all this going forward for you to be able to do that? Joe Rudolph and Rob Delaney are going to have to dig deep and find a way to get them to do that against the USCs of the world. I guess not this year because they ran away from Notre Dame's schedule. So I guess against the Miamis of this year's schedule and the BYUs and the SMUs, you're also going to have to find a way to do that against Michigan State. You have to find a way to do that in the opener against Wisconsin. And once you have that, one thing technically that I want them to get better on this year is have more of a vertical push. Some of that, the reason why I led with an identity on the offensive line is because I think you need a little bit of that to get more of a vertical push. Some of it's how it's taught. I understand that. But the other part is you had 1.5 maulers on your offensive line last year. You had Gerby Lambert and Anthony Knapp most of the time. I would say over 50% of the time. What did those two guys have in common, Brian? Go back through and watch your run breakdown that you put up on the premium message boards at boards@irishbreakdown.com. Those are two of the only guys that will consistently get a vertical push on the offensive line. But you have a running back room this year that's not as simple as just get a body on a body. It's like you don't have that.
And Gerby did that because he's just that good.
Right.
I don't even know that it was necessarily emphasized.
Sure.
I think Anthony did that also because he's just kind of that good. It was clearly something where you're not seeing the technical requirements needed to get that vertical push once they've gotten that width. I mean, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's going to be the biggest thing out of the offensive line. I'm with you, man. That has to be just the absolute foundation of this offense. We've talked about it ad nauseum on the show. Notre Dame has the odds to go out and win a national championship this year. They have a Heisman favorite on FanDuel in C.J. Carr returning at quarterback. But none of them can be that successful if you're not shored up front. And that's going to be absolutely huge. Absolutely huge.
I think the number two thing for me, Trevor, is this one's a little bit different because I don't really care if they have the receiver rotation figured out by the end of spring. And I don't think that you will because we're not going to see Quincy Porter this spring. And we're not going to see Braylon Robinson this spring. And it's spring number one for some of the freshmen. What I need to see, however, is I need to see that the receiving core has where Mike Brown goes into the spring or goes into the summer saying, and Mike Denbrock going into the summer saying, okay, we've really got 6, 7, 8 guys that have proven that they can help us right now. How do we whittle this down to 5 or 6? That's what I want to see. I want to see that receiver room take that jump, Trev, where some separation happens between what we've seen and what we've seen in the past, and not where it's like 1 or 2 guys are really good and I'm not sure about the rest, right? Because like there's 2 ways this conversation could go. One is, okay, Faison and Greathouse are balling, but I'm not sure what we've got after that. And there's about 5 guys that are competing to hopefully fill out the depth chart. That's one way of looking at it. The other is we know they're dudes, but man, Cam Williams had a great spring. Micah Gilbert had a great spring. Mylan Graham had a great spring. Bubba Frazier had a great spring. Boy, the last 5 practices, Kadon Finley might have been our top 2 or 3 dudes. You know what I mean? And now we get Quincy Porter back this summer. We got some things we got to figure out. This is going to be a tough decision. That's where I want this to be. Because we could talk all we want about the talent in the room and the athleticism in the room, and that's all fine and dandy. This ain't the first time we've had this conversation, Trev. Definitely isn't the first time. But it never manifested the way it needed to on the field. And even last year, where I thought the receivers did a solid, good job, they were missing Jaden Greathouse all season, really. I mean, they didn't use him the way they should have in the first 4 games. And then, he was down. So I look at it and say, I want to see minimum 7 guys, if not 8, that in some form or fashion have done so well this spring that they go into the offseason saying, you're in the battle to become part of that rotation. And to where Mike Brown says, Coach, we've got to play at least 5, if not 6. Well, why do you say that, Mike? Well, number one, here's the advantages to a deeper rotation, blah, 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 blah. But like, Coach, how do I justify not playing Mylan Graham more? Let's say the starting lineup is Faison, Greathouse, and Gilbert. Let's say that's the 3. How do I not justify, Coach, playing number 3 more, Mylan Graham? Coach, Cam is ready to help us. 15, 20 snaps a game minimum. We've got to take a couple shots to him. Cam can help us win football games. Man, Coach, how do we not play Elijah Burris more? Coach, he can help us. We got to figure out how he get. And oh, by the way, the most unguardable guy we had this summer was Quincy Porter. Like, that's where you want to be going into the summer, not where we've been in the past, where it's like, okay, I know this guy and this guy's going to play, but I'm not. Like last year. They were one more injury away, in my opinion, from being in trouble. I mean, Jaden Greathouse going down basically eliminated the depth chart. I mean, they were riding 3 against anybody that would have pulsed. They were riding 3. I mean, KK Smith didn't play against USC. Coming off the best game of his career, played 0 snaps against USC. Why? They trusted him enough to beat NC State. They clearly, for whatever reason, didn't trust him enough to beat USC. Well, that tells you something. You lose one more guy, and now you're having to play a guy that you didn't trust to beat you, help you beat USC. Now, we could agree or disagree that with their evaluation, that's not the point. The point is they didn't trust it. The best thing for a coach is I wasn't looking for reasons to want to have to play 6 guys. They gave me reasons to play 6 guys. They basically made it to where if I don't play 6 guys, I'm not doing my job. That's what you want to see. And so all these comments that I'm making are about the players in the room, not the coach. They've got to do the work to say to Coach Brown, Coach, you got to play me. You got to figure it out. Figure it out. That's what you get paid the big bucks for. Figure it out. Because I can help you win football games against everybody. And it's not just, well, here's our 1 and 2, and then there's a drop off between 3 and 4, and then there's another drop off. It's like, I don't really care who plays. To where now, if Jaden Greathouse goes down again, you're like, man, that sucks, but we're going to be okay. In a way that I don't think was necessarily true last year. Will Pauling was a nice player for Notre Dame. He's not Jaden Greathouse. Now it's like, okay, Jaden Greathouse goes down for a few games, so who do you put in the slot? Jordan Faison. Well, wait, Jordan Faison. Yeah, I'm going to put Mylan Graham or Elijah Burris or Cam Williams or Micah Gilbert or somebody else at this X because they're ballers, and now Jordan is going to be really good in the slot. You know what I mean? Like that's the difference, Trev. You lose Malachi Fields last year. That's a problem. There's a big drop off. Now it's like, okay, you've got Micah Gilbert, you've got Quincy Porter, you've got Cam Williams. You maybe could play Caden Finley or Elijah Burr. I mean, you know what I mean? Like now it's like, okay, we're in a much better position to thrive someone not taking that step or someone going down or whatever the case may be. And that's what I want to see. That's a big one for me, Trev.
Yeah, when I sent you over my list, the wide receivers were at the top of my list. And look, this is going to be very similar to along the lines of what you're talking about. But this is going to be 50% on the players and then 50% on Mike Brown and the other support staff in the receiver room. The young talent has to be developed because now for the first time since Mike Brown has been the receivers coach at Notre Dame, they don't have like a 5th-year senior transfer portal receiver to help them get bailed out of certain situations, which is one of the reasons why I love their portal pickups. Going after a redshirt freshman in Quincy Porter and a redshirt sophomore in Mylan Graham. Absolutely love those pickups who have like a combined maybe 100 receiving yards in their career between the two. So I love the move to go get them. Now you have to develop it because your most experienced guy in the room is Jordan Faison, and then it's Jaden Greathouse, who's had some health issues over the last 12 months. Little less. But point being, last season and then already starting off this spring, he's not at 100%. So the young talent development absolutely has to stick and then make it through the season. We can't have a 3rd year in a row of like, yo, this is a dude in the spring. This guy's always going to play. And he's going to push somebody. Man, look at this guy. And then we just don't see anything of him in the regular season. That trend has to end now because now you do have the talent. When I mean develop the young talent, I mean that in both senses. I mean like academically young, freshmen, redshirt freshmen, true sophomores. And then I also mean like the inexperienced young. Micah Gilbert, in terms of experience on the field, is still young. Cam Williams, in terms of experience, is still young, even though academically they're going to be juniors. So developing that young talent is going to go a very long way. And if it gets developed, I think a byproduct of that is just naturally the cream will rise to the top. You know what I'm saying? And you're just going to have your rotation set to where it's like, we got to play this guy, we got to play this guy, we got to play this guy. And ideally, the issue midway through fall camp is like, okay, well, we need a 6-man rotation. There's like 9 guys that I could play. Now, one of the things that gives me confidence that this is going to happen is it's not just Mike Brown coaching 15 guys anymore. He now has the support to reach out to other players. There are now veterans in the room that have been with this program for 4 years to help bring some of those guys along. And they're not relying on a Will Pauling who's a transfer and a Malachi Fields who's a transfer to help bring other people along. So I think all signs are pointing in that direction. But one of the biggest things for me, man, you got to develop the young talent in the room. That's the next step in the evolution for Mike Brown as a coach. And that's the next step in the evolution for some of these players. I think that's going to be huge. But Brian, our third point was the exact same. You can have a great offensive line. You can have very talented receivers and a carved out 6-man receiving core where the talent's been developed. But it's the person facilitating them the football that also needs to kind of take that next step for this offense to truly be elite this year.
Who would that player be, Trev? Could it be number 13, CJ Carr? Yeah, look, Can Notre Dame win a championship without CJ Carr being an elite quarterback? Yeah, they can. I would argue the last 2 national champions weren't necessarily elite. I know that Fernando Mendoza won the Heisman last year, Trev, but did I view him as elite? No. He's a gamer. He's a winner. And it was a year where there weren't a lot of great Heisman options. Well, none that played quarterback anyway. And so, but if he's not, it means everybody else has to be better. Whereas when the quarterback is elite, he makes everybody else around him better. Quarterbacks more than any other position, more than any other singular position, can do more to make everybody else around him better. An elite left tackle doesn't do that. An elite center doesn't do that. An elite wide receiver doesn't do that. As Texas showed in the 2024 playoffs, you can take Jeremiah Smith out of the game if you want to and then make somebody else beat you. An elite quarterback elevates everybody else. Now, an offensive line as a whole can elevate everybody else around him, but that's 5 guys. 1 guy can do that at quarterback if you have the right guy. And CJ Carr has the potential and the talent to be that guy. Now, he doesn't need to be Joe Burrow, although that was my comp for him coming out of high school, was Joe Burrow. But he needs to have the same impact for Notre Dame that Joe Burrow had in 2019. And what I mean by that is Joe Burrow actually had to throw the ball a lot more. CJ won't have to do that. It's a different offense and all this other kind of stuff. But Joe Burrow made sure that they got the most out of Jamar Chase, which was elite. They got the most out of Justin Jefferson, which was elite. They got the most out of Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Thaddeus Moss and Terrace Marshall and all those other guys, right? Like his play meant that if Jamar's a dude, then I'm going to make Jamar look like a dude because I'm going to make sure the ball's getting to him. And you know what I mean? Like those kind of things. And that's what a quarterback does. I'm going to make sure that we get the best out of you because I'm going to challenge you. I'm going to push you. I'm going to encourage you. But then also I'm going to get that rock to you when we need to get that rock to you. And I'm going to get it to you with the proper ball placement, the proper timing. It's going to allow you to take a 12-yard comeback where normally if I'm a split second too late, you're getting tackled for, hey, 2nd and 8, 12-yard gain, first down. Good job. Keep the chains moving. But when the quarterback really bangs it right, he catches it, he can then square up, make a guy miss, and all of a sudden it's a 35-yard touchdown. That's where you want to be. That's an elevator. Hey, left tackle, you missed your block, no problem. I saw it. I know what to do. Bam, I get that check down. So instead of a sack, I just got this ball out and we gained 3 yards. That's an elite play because instead of it being 2nd and 16, it's now 2nd and 7. And I just saved you on the limited snaps where you didn't do the job you needed to do. That's what an elevator quarterback can do. That's what elite quarterbacks do. I think to a degree Fernando Mendoza did that for Indiana last year. I do. I don't want to poo-poo Fernando Mendoza. He was the important ingredient, in my opinion, winning a championship. What I'm saying is he's not on the same level as Joe Burrow, Mac Jones, Tua, Trevor Lawrence, Brady Quinn. You know what I mean? Like there's just a difference. He was really good. Those guys were elite. CJ's really good. You can win a championship. But they won a championship because they had the great O-line. They had great skill at other positions, great D. I mean, you know what I mean? Like everybody else had to also be great. CJ's the kind of guy that says, okay, I'm going to take really good and I'm going to turn him into elite. And if a guy is elite, I'm going to make sure he's elite because I'm going to do what I need to do. And so, yes, I think coming out of spring, we need to have no doubt about that CJ Carr has raised his level of play. We don't know the answer to that yet, Trev. Physically, he's been super impressive so far, but we haven't seen enough of actual practice time to say, oh, yeah, he's taken that leap in every area, not just – he's physically more impressive than he was last fall. But it's all of the things encompassing. Physically is a good first step, you know?
The biggest thing with CJ and his next step, and I agree with everything that you're saying. So what I'm about to say is more so of an add-on. He needs to be the guy in this offense this year that the other 10 guys in the huddle can look to and say, okay, we need to play. So the last 2 years, it's been Jeremiah Love. Now, I have all the confidence in the world in Aeneas and Kedron when he's healthy, and Nolan James has been putting on a show. But this is now CJ's team. the people on the sidelines, the other players on the sidelines, the coaches on the sidelines need to be able to look to 13 and say, okay, go out there and make a play, because that's what Fernando Mendoza did at an elite level. Is when they needed something to happen, he just made it happen. I'm with you. Did he do it to the same degree as Joe Burrow did? No. Did he do it to the same degree that Trevor Lawrence did? No. But he didn't win the Heisman because he was a ravishly good-looking dude. He didn't win the Heisman because, 55 of the voters shared the same last name as him.
Right.
It's because in the moments where it counted, against Penn State, against Oregon, against, later on after the trophy had been handed out, against Miami in the playoffs, against Oregon in the playoffs, when they needed something to happen, they looked at 15 in red and said, go do something.
He also didn't do it because he's wicked smart, because Tom Maurice was wicked smart. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
Jack Cohn was wicked smart, and there's a level of play that he was at that they weren't at.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And it's all to varying degrees, to your point. In some cases, it looks like Joe Burrow throwing for 60 touchdowns in a season. Others, it looks like Fernando Mendoza, where he had like 31 passing touchdowns when he won the Heisman, and like 8 of them were thrown after the second half at double-digit leads.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So it looks different, but in the moments that count, that's who CJ needs to be. That's the next step for him this year, because I don't think that he has that in the backfield this year. And that's not a slight to Nolan James and Aeneas Williams or Kedron. Just nobody has a Jeremiah Love. That's the biggest thing.
And Indiana didn't have a Jeremiah Love either, but they had an elite offensive line and a quarterback that could say, hey, I'm going to, you know what I mean? So you didn't have to be elite. You just had to do your jobs at a high level and be the best version of yourselves. And that's exactly what we're talking about. They needed Jeremiah Love to win in 2024 and 2025, especially 2025. It's okay. Can you win without him this year? Well, that's if your quarterback's that guy.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, can they win a title if CJ's just really good? Yeah, of course. I mean, there's no reason CJ Carr can't do what Will Howard did in 2024. But can he be that elevator? Like that's what I want to see.
Brian, to wrap us up today here on the Irish Breakdown podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel, we're basically going to have the same discussion that we just had about the offensive side of the ball, but we're going to flip it to the other side and talk about some defense. And there are other things that we need to see from this unit as well. And just as a quick reminder, like we said at the start of the offensive portion, this isn't get better on 3rd and long. These are more foundational things that we want to see this team improve on and accomplish over the course of the offseason. That's going to be the biggest thing.
Yeah, I think it all starts with the fact that you've got a brand new staff. I mean, all the other stuff, to me, it's all great. Hey, we know who our D-line rotation is going to be. We know who's going to play where in the secondary. We know that we're better. We're going to be better here. We're going to. To me, at the end of the day, you want 3rd down to get better. You want your red zone defense to get better. You want your pass rush to get better. You want all these things to get better. You want to be more consistent on defense than you were last year. You want to be better on 3rd and long than you were on defense last year. You want to create more tackles for loss than you were on last year. All these different things. Then there needs to be a much better connection between the players and the coaches. And you can even add to that, Trevor, the coaches and the coordinator. And last year, and Chris Ash said something in his press conference that I think was spot on. And he said, or maybe it was Marcus Freeman. It was Marcus Freeman that said in his opening press conference, actually, we talked about it's actually going to be easier to have 3 new assistants break into a coordinator than it was for a coordinator with 3 returning assistant coaches, because the coordinator had to learn so much. And then they all also had to relearn. So technically, you kind of had 4 new coaches last year, because even though they knew the players, they clearly didn't know what Chris Ash wanted, which is why the defense looked like hot garbage the first 3 games of the year. Like those kids didn't forget how to play football, and Mike Mickens and Al Washington and Max Bulla didn't forget how to coach football. It was a scenario where Trev, him not being where he needed to be as the coordinator kind of made everything a problem. Well, now the 3 assistants have to learn from him and what he wants, and then that relationship has to partner well between them and the players, and Chris Ash and the players. This cohesiveness, this, I don't know what, synergy, whatever word you want to use, this has to work, and it didn't always work last year. And what does that mean? And this is the comment that Chris Ash made. He made a very pointed. He's like, I didn't know what these guys could do last year. I mean, you can watch film, but It's different when you're there. And Drake Bowen wasn't the same player in 25 he was in 24, and Leonard Moore. I mean, it just guys are different. Some get better, some aren't as good. You've got new players. How do these guys work together? I know how Don Schuler played with Xavier Watts. I don't know how he's going to play with Jalen Stroman or Tay Johnson. I know how Christian Gray played with Jordan Clark. I don't know how he's going to in Xavier Watts, but I don't know how he's going to communicate with Jalen Stroman and Tay Johnson and Devontae Smith. So there's all these different things that you had to learn. Well, now you know it. Now it's time for you as the leader of the defense to make sure that all of you are walking in the same direction as the coaching staff, and that you don't need a come to Jesus moment from the head football coach because you guys are not on the same page, because you as the D coordinator are not necessarily carrying out the philosophy that's desired by the head coach and using your players to the best of your ability. You can understand it and you can excuse it away and you can justify why they struggled in the first 3 games last year. You can. It doesn't mean that we accept it or it's okay, but you can explain it and understand it and process it. Now it's like, okay, but that is out the window now, because now you do know it. You need to make sure your coaches understand the standard, and then you're responsible ultimately for how all your players are going to be. And we've talked about it. Gideon Rosa talked about it in his highlight video or in the practice report response. He's like, Chris Ash he doesn't know how Chris Ash was last year. He was just talking about how active Chris Ash was, Trev. And that's not what we saw from Chris Ash last spring or last fall. He was very much a observer. Now Chris Ash has a much more active, I'm involved role. Okay, that's fine. And Danny, that's great. I love that. Al Golden was that way eventually, because you're learning. And there was a level of trust that he was giving to the coaches in certain areas last year. Now it's like, okay, this is your defense. If a coach doesn't know how to do certain things, that's on you. The players don't know how to do certain things, that's on you. If a guy's not being used in a way that fits his skill set, that's on you. And you're seeing him take a little bit more ownership during the practice as well. But it's ultimately at the end of the spring, I want to know that he has connected well with the assistants, and the assistants have connected well with the players. And it just trickles on down, and everybody's going in the same direction. Where it's not like you're game planning this thing, but then you get to the game and you're not calling these things and the players don't know what's going on and you're not sure and it's year 1 blues. Well, now you're in year 2. Those things should be behind us. And that's what I want to know. I want to know that connection is there. I want to know that everybody's marching in the same direction. And then that leads to, Trev, you want to have a defense that's more consistently aggressive than the one we saw last year. That's to me, the byproduct of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's something that's going to be needed, because this defense played night and day different, man, when it played aggressive versus when it was more of a read and react defense. I do want to echo one thing that you mentioned about streamlining communication. And I think that's so important, especially now that you have all of these other assistant coaches that are helping you out. It's not just Charlie Partridge that's in charge of coaching up an entire defensive line room. And it's not just Aaron Henry. Javon Codlin's also in there. Andy Buzz also in there. So your safeties can't be hearing one thing from Javon Codlin and then one thing from Aaron Henry and then one thing from Chris Ash. Communication absolutely has to be streamlined. But yes, I agree with you, man. That's going to lead you to being more aggressive. And that's not something that we have to wait until game 1 against Wisconsin to figure out if this defense is aggressive. There's a chance that Notre Dame's offense, when this team goes best on best in practice, might be the first or second best offense that this defense faces all season long. And yeah, I'm including the postseason in that. Sue me, but I'm in a hyped up mood because this team is absolutely nutty. Okay. But in all seriousness, we're not going to have to wait long to find out if this team is going to be aggressive. And I'm not talking about the blue gold game, but there's going to be things that we see in some of the open practices, scheme things that we're going to be able to see if this defense remains its aggressive identity. Now, hopefully that you have more streamlined communication within the staff. And now Chris Ash has a strong evaluation of what his players are, and he knows what their skill sets are and how they're best utilized. Hopefully that's not going to be an issue this year. Leonard Moore is too darn good of a corner to ask him to sit back and drop to 12 yards of depth and play cover 3 for 60 minutes of football. Tay Johnson is way too good of a ball hawk to just ask him to play center field and just not
all game,
crash down and roll down
right?
all game.
All game, right?
That's the biggest thing. So,
just like I would say, he's too good to just always be playing in the alleys. Like
100%.
The fact that he can do it all, and that you never know what he's going to do, and then using him that way. Exactly right. Exactly.
And
right.
now, if they're able to maintain aggression, and Chris Ash understands what his players are, this is something that we talked about in a couple shows ago, which kind of leads us into your second point. Chris Ash's defense is now established.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a significantly higher floor in 2026 for this unit. Aggressive or not, whether we like the scheme or not, these players are now going into year 2. And now they have position coaches that are in place, not better, not worse, just different position coaches in place that are going to be able to preach from the top down and not have to try to get their guys to unlearn what they learned under the previous regime. Year 2 under Chris Ash is going to be big.
Yeah, and really we can kind of be quick with this one, Trev, because the first part leads to the second part. The first part where the relationship, the connection is strong, leads to, okay, if we're all on the same page, then we can really establish what the Chris Ash defense is. And this isn't so much about what, how much zone are you versus man are you playing? It's about, do you understand what I want? And even if Chris Ash comes out and does the exact same dumb defensive philosophy in games 1, 2, and 3 that we saw last year, it's still going to get executed at a much higher level because they all know this is what he wants to do. The problem with that last year was you practiced aggressiveness all spring, all fall, and then when you get ready for Miami, you take that away. Now it's read and react. It's a million sim pressures. It's off zone coverage, things like that, right? Like that was the issue. And guys didn't know what the expectations were. They didn't know how to run that defense because they hadn't really practiced it as much. If you're going to blitz X number of times and you need to practice that blitz X number of times, if you practice blitz X number of times, but then you don't run those things in games, and then you're not prepared to run the things that you are running. So it's like, okay, if there's a connection with him and the assistants, and then him and the players, and then the assistants and the players, and everybody's on the same page, whatever he wants to run, you're going to execute at a high level. And so, yes, there's some schematic issues that need to get worked through, just like I think that in 2024, Jim Knowles had some schematic issues that the team had to work through. But by the end of the year, they were kind of all on the same page, and the defense could go out and dominate. Even though there's some things about his defense that I didn't like schematically. And so that's what it comes down to, Trev, because as we've said, Chris Ash is not Brian Van Gorder. I don't know if he's an elite D coordinator, but he's not that. And that's the big thing. Just the foundation of what he wants to do is laid this spring. Not let's practice this because this is what the head coach wants, but when we get to Wisconsin, we're going to do this. Dude, whatever you want to do, make sure that's the stuff you're working on this spring. And I love the fact that he talked about how much, we're focusing a lot more on attention to detail this year. Because, I asked him a question about run defense, and he talks about, like, here's the things we need to do to get better against the run. And it's the foundation of what we do. And I loved hearing that because I think Al Golden schematically was great. But what's the one beef we had the last 2 years of Al Golden's tenure? He didn't put enough emphasis on stopping the run. That was the NFL part of him in there. And he could never quite kick that, Trev. You know what I mean? Because you don't have to be an elite run defense in the NFL, in my opinion, to win. You do in college. And we've pointed this out. The last 5 national champions have allowed 90 or fewer yards in rushing. 3 of the last 5 national champs have allowed fewer than 80 yards rushing per game. Notre Dame had a 30-yard improvement from 2020? From 2024, Trev? I think it was a 30-yard improvement. See, Notre Dame rush defense this past year was at 100.1. And then the year before, a 37 yard improvement on run defense, and they're still 10 yards away from the worst rush defense of the last 5 years. So he's talking about getting better and how important that is and how that leads all. That's all great. But he also talked about how now that we're all know what we need to do, I now know what this kid can't do well. And I should find that quote because it was a very fascinating quote from him. And it was really interesting because just a couple quotes from him, Trev. Here's a couple of them. He says, somebody asked him, how much quicker can you move now as compared to last year? He said probably a little bit quicker, but we're going to still take it slow because we really want to make sure we hone in on the details. And the guys truly understand all aspects of every call, how to communicate, how to adjust, making sure eyes are right. Fundamentally, we're sound. There will be a time when we can speed it up, but we really do. Our process is to slow it down, to do a great job of teaching and being thorough, and then we'll speed it up as we go. Here's the deal. If he doesn't run the philosophy that we want him to run, if he's not aggressive as we want him to be, but his players know exactly where to be and know exactly how to get there, they're still going to be a really, really, really good defense because the talent is elite. You see what I'm saying? Last year, not only was the scheme was a problem, they didn't know how to execute the scheme. If they know how to execute this scheme, it may not be a great scheme, but Leonard Moore's still Leonard Moore. Tay Johnson still Tay Johnson. Francis Brew still Francis Brew, and Boubacar Traore still Boubacar Traore, and Drake Bowen still Drake Bowen. You know what I mean? Where Drake Bowen wasn't Drake Bowen last year. You know what I mean? Because he wasn't sure what he was doing. Now it's like, hey, I may not love the call, but Drake Bowen knew what to do, and he was there. And that half a second is the difference between Drake Bowen missing a tackle for a 15-yard gain and Drake Bowen hitting a guy for a 1-yard gain. Or Jaden Osbury doing it. Or Adon Schuler. It's the difference between Adon letting that ball get caught in front of him in the end zone because he wasn't sure how to play the ball, or Adon either lighting the guy up or jumping in front and picking it off or breaking it up. You know what I mean? Like those split seconds of knowing what to do and how to do it are the difference between, I don't care what the call is, they all know what they're doing. They all executed it. They all ran it at a high level. And it's going to work for the most part because the talent is elite. Every great defense didn't always have like this guy's the smartest coach ever. Sometimes it's just like this coach, they all know what to do and they all know where to be. And that guy's a freaking stud. And that guy's a stud. And that guy's a stud. So even though it's kind of basic stuff, keep everything in front of you, they're flying at the ball and because they're elite players and you're really darn good on defense, even though it's not as creative or whatever as what this coach may have done. And that's why I literally said this part won't be long. I literally started the whole thing off with this part won't be long and then talked for 15 minutes. But like it just kind of got me fired up. Like that's the key, man. You better make sure they all know what they're doing and everybody understands and is bought into what you're doing. Hopefully he also buys into what Marcus Freeman wants, which is what we saw the last 8 games. Hopefully we see all that aggressiveness. I hope we do. But there's going to be calls we don't like. That's true everywhere for every team. But as long as the kids know this is what I'm supposed to do, I'm going to do it 100 miles an hour. And I'm going to do it the way that I do it because then Tay knows how to fit off me. Let's say I'm Drake Bowen. Hey, I don't care what the call is. I know how to fit off Francis. Tay knows how to fit off me. Guess what? Francis is better than the guy across from him. I'm better than the guy I'm taking on. Tay's better than the guy he's taking on. And as long as we know where to be, we're still going to make that play. Yeah, maybe in a more aggressive defense instead of a 2-yard gain, it's a 2-yard loss, but it's not a 20-yard gain because I fit wrong off of him or I wasn't sure how to fit off of him, and now I'm getting blocked 3-4 yards downfield, which means I'm getting knocked into Tay, who fit wrong off of me, and now it's a 30-yard gain. Right? That's the difference. And that's why knowing that his defense has been established at the end of the spring, whether we like it, it's my philosophy or not, everybody, because it can't be established if everybody's not bought in. And that's, kind of why I say point number 2 is built off of point number 1, but they're, a lot of them are kind of together.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, now that his defense is established, and I wholeheartedly agree with everything that you said. For me, one of the things that I want to see now that he is going into year 2 is more of a consistent interior pass rush. I am ridiculously high on what Notre Dame's edge rushers are this year. But outside of Riley Mills over the last couple seasons, Notre Dame has lacked a consistent interior pass rush. That's the biggest thing. And one way to neutralize really good defensive ends is if you're not getting a whole lot up the middle either. Now, I'm not naive to the fact that you're not going all 4 defensive linemen on every single pass play are going to get pressure on the quarterback. We've seen D-lines do it before. But one of the things that made Miami's defensive line so good was that on one play it was Ruben Bain. On the next play it was Akeem Mesidor. On this play it was Ahmed Moten. On this play it was Justin Scott. On this play. So while I was very confident last year in talking about Notre Dame's defensive tackles being to come at you in waves and waves, and personnel-wise they were to a degree, able to come at you in waves and waves. Injuries hampered that a little bit. I think you have the personnel to do that this year. Jared Dawson was a really strong pass rusher at Louisville. Came to Notre Dame, and he ended up becoming a better run stopper than he was a pass rusher. Not that he was a bad pass rusher, but I think this year you have more of that skill set in depth on this year's defensive line. So one of the things that I want to see, Brian, is this interior pass rush really start to take off in Chris Ash's second year. That'll be huge for them.
I am curious to see how that's going to be, because there's there's two ways you can rush the quarterback as an interior guy that's effective. Some of it's going to result in sacks, and one won't result in a lot of sacks, but will for the interior. And I'm curious what his version is. I'm curious what he wants it to be, and I don't know the answer to that. And I don't know that one is better than the other. It depends on your personnel, but there's two ways to be really good up the middle in pass pro. One is you're Riley Mills. You're winning on the edge. You can bull rush when you need to, but you can also get off. You can win on the edge. You can do all those different things. I mean, I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe the last sack of Riley's Notre Dame career was actually lined up over the tackle. I believe they had bumped him out, and he came off the edge. I'm actually going to go find that play, but I'm pretty sure that I'm right on that, Trev. And you're not going to see Tion Gray do that. You know, the other way to win and be dominant in pass pro is to collapse the pocket. And it's not me getting the sack, but it's Boubacar or Bryce or Drake or somebody else getting the sack, because I just took the center, put him on skates, and drove him 3 yards into the backfield. You know what I mean? And Drake came right off of me, because one of the big things, Trev, is when a linebacker is making his move off of the double team at the line of scrimmage, and he's declared his gap at the line of scrimmage, the quarterback can now see him. If he's making that fit a yard or two into the backfield, now once he clears that, he's on the quarterback. He's on him. And that's the difference between the hit that Drake Bowen had on Will Howard that was just second too late, because Will Howard saw him coming from the line of scrimmage because there was no push, and the hit that they got on Drew Aller on the third quarter sack. Remember that, where Kingston hit him and then Rod Hurd cleaned it up? They got to Drew deeper in the backfield because there was a better push. So, like, he didn't see Kingston come until too late, because Drew Aller has some issues, but feeling the pocket was not necessarily one of those in 2024. He actually had, I thought, a pretty good feel in the pocket. But that Kingston came off the stunt later because there was more of an overall push. What will they go for this year, or will it be a little bit of both? I am curious, but either way, no matter which way it is, you can't just be sitting there at the line of scrimmage inside, because otherwise I'm going to have a nice clean pocket. We're just going to ride those tackles out and we're going to be fine. Or if the tackle takes an inside move and we wash them down and I spin out, those D tackles aren't coming from the line of scrimmage to get me outside. I'm going to be able to slide outside, reset my feet, throw the football. However you do it, the D tackles have to be disruptors in the pass game. I'm with you. I'm only adding, I'm curious which way it's going to be. Because last year they tried to do a lot of what I just described, and it didn't work because that's not Jared Dawson's game. Sort of Jason Onye's game, but it's not really Elijah Hughes' game a ton either. It is Tion Gray's game. It is Francis Brug's game. It can be Chris Burgess's game. It can be Armo Mukum's game. They're more built to just, I'm going to take this guard and I'm going to drive him into the front porch. You know what I mean? Like, I'm going to let quarterback's not going to feel like he can step into this throw, because I'm going to take this guy and I'm going to just keep riding him back. You know what I mean? You've got the personnel to do more of that if you want to do more of that, but you also have some guys who can win in the middle too. How much do you use that? I'm very curious to see. I don't know if we'll have a full answer to that by the end of spring, but I hope we do, because that's going to say a lot about the first couple of things. My third thing, Trev, is pretty basic. I actually will be quick on this one. For me, quick. For those listening via podcast, Trevor literally just checked his watch. I want to know that coming out of the spring, we have a pretty good idea of who's going to play where. Even if some guys are going to cross-train, that they've established, like, coach, I can do both. Not Christian's playing both because we're still not sure where he fits best. Dallas is playing both because we're not sure where he fits best yet. Jaden Sanders is playing both because we're not quite sure what the rotation looks like. It's more so, hey, Dallas is playing both because Dallas is that good at both and we need him to play and he's going to help us at both. Or same thing for Christian. But I hope that they've done enough this spring to where Aaron Henry and Chris Ash and the rest of the secondary staff and defensive staff have a good sense of, here's where Dallas is best, here's where Christian is best. Yes, we can move them here, here, and here, but they've locked down that this is their number one and that's their number two. And these are the guys that we're going to be having as our primary nickels, and here's the primary outside guys and things like that, to where there's some level of, hey, we know who's going to be where. I feel like we know that at safety. And if for some reason we don't see that at safety, it's probably more due to somebody gets beat out because somebody else like has a great fall camp. You know what I mean? Like Joey O'Brien does a great job and passes up Ethan Long or Luke Towers or something. You know what I mean? Like that's the only way we don't know who the 4 is going to be a safety is Joey O'Brien, Brandon Logan, somebody like that has a great summer and fall and he passed somebody up. At corner, there's uncertainty of like, I don't know who's going to be the starting nickel. I have no clue. I think we know who they want it to be, but can he handle it? Is he going to be good there? Can he thrive there? Can he excel there? What if he goes down? What if you have to move him outside? Then who's the nickel? Or right now, who's the starting field corner? Is it Dallas Gold? We've seen 2 different starting field corners so far in fall camp. We've seen we saw Christian Gray kind of take the first reps there. We've seen Jaden Sanders play some of that with the first team. We've seen Dallas Golden now play that. And, of course, DJ McKinney was going to play that. And so, like, I just want to have some semblance of if Jaden Sanders is going to play all 3, great. But he's doing that because he's that good that he's our next man in at all these spots. Or so, you know what I mean? Like, that's more of my thing as opposed to he's playing all those because we're still not sure where he fits best. Or we're not sure we want Jaden Sanders to be an outside guy, but we don't feel good enough about our nickel situation to not play him there also. Or we'd like Dallas Golden is blown up and had a great spring and he's ready to be the field corner, but we still have to play him here because we're still not sure of what, you know what I mean, Trev? Like, so that's my big thing is I want there to be some level of we know who's going to play where, even if it is multiple positions, but they're doing it because that's the depth chart, not because we're still not sure who plays where or who's comfortable where. That's the final big piece for me. So that way you're going into the offseason, here's where we are. And because it's hard to build a coverage structure when you don't know who's going to be where. How do I say, hey, improve your third down pass defense when I'm like, yeah, but I don't know who the flipping nickel's going to be. I don't know who the starting field corner's going to be. So now it's like, okay, we know Christian's going to be here. We know Dallas is going to be there. We know where DJ McKinney and Jaden Sanders are going to be. Now let's make sure we're really harnessing or like honing in on, okay, this is what our coverage structure is going to be because this is what these guys do best. But if Chris Ash and Aaron Henry are going into the offseason, I still don't know who our nickel is for any other reason other than these guys are both really good at it. You know what I mean? Then you feel like, that's not a great place to be.
No, absolutely. My third point's also on the back end. Look, the secondary is in a very interesting spot so far this offseason because on defense, I would argue that they by far have the most moving pieces. Coaching staff and player personnel, they have some of the most amount of newcomers. They have a new coach. You had Javon Codlin leave and go to North Texas and then come back. And then, the heir apparent allegedly at field corner is a guy that's not even on campus yet. So there's so many moving pieces. But some of that gets brushed under the rug. It's like, dude, they got Christian and Leonard and Don and Tate. And it's all fair. Both sides of that argument are very fair. But the biggest thing that I want to see out of this group is developed younger talent. And it's not so much I'm afraid that it's not going to happen. I've just gotten so accustomed to Mike Mickens is just going to have whatever freshman or redshirt freshman is in the 2 deep, they're just going to be ready to play. But the depth in the secondary is very young, both experience-wise and just age-wise. I love what Dallas Golden's doing. Are you going to be able to cross-train him at boundary and at nickel and at field to where he's just the next guy in no matter where? We saw Mark Zachary taking a bunch of different reps. Jaden Sanders comes in. We saw him on the first day take reps at all 3 corner spots. Are you trusting a first-year guy with that responsibility? Is it going to be Aiden Pouncey? Kari Adams has yet to put on the pads yet because he's injured and sitting out the spring. So there's a lot of moving parts in Notre Dame secondary. But the bright side is, and the thing that we're always going to be able to fall back on, is all those moving parts are ridiculously talented. The moving parts on defense are and the coaching staff is very experienced. You have a guy that was a defensive coordinator in the Big Ten last year, is now just your defensive backs coach and co-defensive coordinator. So a lot of moving parts. Get your feet under you, develop the young talent. That's kind of the third and final thing that I want to see, because look, the next time that Notre Dame plays an entire regular season where both of your starting corners play all 12 games will be the first time that happens in the Freeman tenure. That's not a shot at Marcus Freeman. He has no control over that. I know he's not saying, hey, BMO, go get hurt for the rest of the year, please. Hey, Cam Hart, go miss this game. Hey, Leonard, roll your ankle. I know he's not saying that. But continuity, that position is looking a little interesting, and they're going to need some young guys to step up and get developed. That's going to be my third thing. But it's a very interesting spot to be in.
Very much so. Very much so. Trev, as we wrap up, we do have a super chat here from our guy, Jari Z. Bear. Hey, man, we've been wanting an update from you. You said that you were doing some you had to take some test for a job, and we haven't heard back from you how you did on the test. If you're able to get that job, man, we'd love to hear from you. And he says, no question or statement, just showing support. Thanks again, IB. We appreciate you very, very much, man. Very, very much.
Absolutely.
And hopefully things are going well for you. Yeah, Trev, I love it. Tomorrow, folks, we're going to have a real fun show tomorrow. I'm pulling up what I sent Trev. Tomorrow, we're going to have a very interesting conversation about the sophomore class. I feel like this is the overlooked class at Notre Dame. It wasn't ranked as high. There were some misses. And I think people are already we know the 24 class is big. We know the senior class is important. Everybody loves the number one ranked freshman class, but I kind of feel like that sophomore class is being a little bit overlooked, Trev. But if you look at the depth chart and what we project the depth chart to be, this sophomore class is going to be very, very important. We're going to talk about why we think the sophomore class is being overlooked and why it's important. We're going to talk about the biggest sleepers, the most overlooked sleepers on the Notre Dame roster for the 2026 season. And then we're going to wrap tomorrow's show up talking about the teams that we think are the biggest sleepers amongst the teams in college football. So we're going to have another kind of rundown show tomorrow. I can't wait. And, of course, Friday, Trev. You know what Friday is. It's mailbag time. We're very excited about it. They're going to have a mailbag tonight. They're going to have a women's hoops mailbag tomorrow night on IB Nation Sports Talk, which will be a lot of fun. And hopefully they can go out and get a big win this weekend. This would be, I believe, Coach Ivy's first trip beyond the Sweet 16, if she can make it. I believe that Notre Dame, if I remember correctly, I believe Notre Dame has had 5 straight Sweet 16 appearances under Coach Ivy. I'm looking that up right now. They keep getting to the Sweet 16, but they've had trouble getting past it. So, yeah, this is their 5th straight Sweet 16 appearance. They just haven't been able to get past the Sweet 16. So, hopefully, this year's team can be that scrappy underdog that can finally break that Sweet 16 barrier for the ladies. So, going to be a fun weekend. Can't wait.
Absolutely. Well, folks, that's going to do it for us here today on the Irish Breakdown Podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Now, like Brian said, you got IB Nation Sports Beat going live tonight with their midweek mailbag. On your way out of here, be sure to hit that like, hit that subscribe, hit that notification bell. Be sure to share this podcast with your friends, family, anybody that you know loves Notre Dame and college football as much as you do. But with all the moving parts going on with this offseason, spring is kicked off. We got a bunch of good things going over on the premium message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com. So you're definitely going to want to make sure you hop on over there and become a premium message board subscriber. So until tomorrow, that's Brian. I'm Trevor. We'll see you back here very soon on the Irish Breakdown Podcast.